D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers. Back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. Clinical last night, a 5-1 win on home ice against the Edmonton Oilers. And now we discuss the Florida Panthers' place in history. And there's a D word that's floating around. It's not Donick. It's not D-Mace. It's not David. It's not Ding Dong.
Daffy Duck.
It's not Daffy Duck. It's dynasty. And that's the conversation we always like to have in sports when a team has a sustained run of success like the kind that the Florida Panthers are having right now. 3 consecutive trips to the Stanley Cup final, 2 consecutive championships. And last night, as I was watching the game, my friend Mark Lazarus, who reports on the NHL and the Chicago Blackhawks for The Athletic, tweeted this. And this is where I want to start today, because I think this is going to rile some people up, guys. This was Mark's tweet. Quote, "Hi, I'm here to remind you that a dynasty requires at least 3 consecutive championships. 2 in a row is a repeat. 3 finals in a row is, I don't know, a run of dominance. 3+ straight titles is a dynasty. By definition, dynasties do not yield power, not even for a year. The Lightning were not a dynasty. The Penguins were not a dynasty. The Blackhawks were not a dynasty. The Kings were not a dynasty. The 1980s Oilers were not a dynasty. The Bulls, UGG in parentheses, because he's a Knicks fan, were a dynasty twice. The Yankees, double UGG, because he's a Mets fan, were a dynasty. The Islanders, the Canadians, the A's. So this is where I want to start today. First of all, Willie and Derek, do you agree with Mark's definition of a dynasty?
I do. I don't think that, listen, because we can, if that is indeed the case, that all you have to do is, go to are we just saying go to a finals in any sport 3 times and you can wear 1? Is that considered a dynasty? Last time I checked, I thought a dynasty, each team, when they put dynasty next to their name, they have 3 championships within a span of 4 years, or they have 3 in a row. The Chicago Bulls, like you said, they did it twice. You look at the Dallas Cowboys, they won 3 and 4. The New England Patriots, those are dynasties. What the Panthers did is great, but unless they win it next season, then it's not a dynasty.
I will submit this to you as a counterpoint to the New England Patriots specifically. The Patriots did indeed win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years between 2001 and 2004, but they did not win 3 in a row.
But it's
so
3
by
in
Lazarus' definition,
exactly.
they were never a dynasty?
Correct.
Ever? See,
But
the
the Dallas Cowboys are considered a dynasty, and they won 3 in 4 years.
So,
but they didn't win 3 in a row.
They are definitely not considered a dynasty by Mark Lazarus,
Yes, exactly.
who apparently has the definition. And hey, look, he's a fellow that I like Mark's stuff. He's got good stuff, but he will throw opinions out there that he knows will be challenged.
But I do think it is a fascinating discussion as to how we define a dynasty. The Kansas City Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowl titles in the past 6 years. They've appeared in 5 Super Bowls in the past 6 years. They are the first team in NFL history to play in 5 Super Bowls over a 6-year span. I would consider that a dynasty. 5 Super Bowl appearances in 6 years with 3 titles. To me, I would classify the current Kansas City Chiefs as a dynasty. And that's the question I have for all of you at 615-737-1025. How do you define a dynasty? Does it have to be a three-peat in order for you to be considered a dynasty? Is it a certain number of titles within a certain number of years? I want to know, because I do find it to be a fascinating discussion.
Can I ask a question? You guys, Derek, you give me your opinion first.
Okay.
Do we have a different standard for the dynasty in the salary cap era? because I believe, just from my view,
Mm-hmm.
that it's different for the salary cap era than it was when they were, say, in NHL, 6 teams, right? For decades, there were only 6 teams. In baseball, for decades, there were a lot less teams, right? Pre-expansion and no salary cap, a wider gap between the bigger spenders and not. I think the definition changes in the current modern era where most sports, all sports, have some version of revenue sharing / salary cap.
I want to no. I don't think so. For this reason, and I understand because of salary cap, there wasn't one, so teams were able to keep guys together for longer. Contracts were longer, so I understand that, but I think the money obviously is much greater, and if you choose to keep, because certain sports, one, football, I think if you have that quarterback, you're more likely to become a dynasty than not having that quarterback. So if I have like Patrick Mahomes, I know that in the next, say, 3 to 4 years, Patrick's going to win at least one more. I believe that. So as long as I have Patrick, it's just like back in the day when they were able to keep all the guys together. As long as I have my quarterback, the odds of me winning, and New England has told you, the Kansas City Chiefs have told you, and other quarterbacks have told you, that the likelihood of me winning is all predicated on who I have underneath center, and it goes up if I have one of those elite quarterbacks. So I still see it as, I don't see it being more difficult now than it was back then.
Willie, tell me if you think I'm off base here. What the Florida Panthers have done over the past three seasons has been incredibly impressive. But right before the Panthers went to 3 consecutive finals and won 2, the Tampa Bay Lightning went to 3 consecutive finals and won 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if the fact that it's happened twice in a row, a team goes to 3 consecutive finals, wins 2, does that lessen the impressiveness? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Tell me if you think that's a ridiculous idea.
I think it's 2 very special teams that probably have strengthened each other over the years.
Absolutely.
I think, Tampa was first, and then Florida, who was in the dregs, and this is another topic we're going to get to. Florida is not that far removed from being one of the dregs of the league, and kind of what's going on. Are they even going to be there?
They were largely irrelevant for 20 years.
20 years.
Wow.
So it's a remarkable turnaround. And now we're talking about whether it's a dynasty or not. That's incredible. That is a great, great team. So whether we label it a dynasty or not, what they have done, that is a tremendous hockey team to take out the teams they took out on the way there, including the Oilers, who are still searching for that first title in a long, long time. So these are all great points. I'm curious what our listeners think on our call and text line, 615-737-1025, because it does come down to your own personal definition. This is classic sports talk. There's no wrong answer. Dynasty I'm still a little bit hesitant, but I would also say this. Mm-hmm. If you go back another year or two, they started to get good. It wasn't like they just got good, for this 3-year span. They were getting good they've been a pretty dominant team for about 5 years now, going back to when Andrew Brunette took over for Joel Quenneville. The first time I really noticed them was the year that COVID kind of messed up and shook up the divisions. They had to put everybody regionally to limit the travel, and the Panthers were actually in the Predators division, which is still surreal to think about. But they played about 8 times that year. So that year
they went 37, 14, and 5.
They were really, really good.
Games.
They were really good.
And finished in second place in that division, by the way.
It was at Tampa they were behind?
It would have been, or would have been Carolina.
Maybe it was Carolina. And because Tampa played the whole year without Nikita Kucherov, and then, hey, he's ready to go for the playoffs.
Carolina won that quote-unquote Central Division. 36, 12, and 8 for 80 points. Florida, 37, 14, and 5 for 79 points.
Yeah. And so you had 3 superpowers there, and the Predators were 4th, I think.
They were.
because somebody had to be fourth, and the Predators beat out the Stars, who were pretty good. That was a pretty interesting run within that season. But all that to say, that Florida team had the light go on. Then the following year, they won the President's Trophy, which is not nothing, and lost to Tampa, with one of the great teams, whether, we're talking about whether that was a dynasty. And then the 3-year run of going to the Cup final 3 straight years and winning 2. So really, it's a 5-year run, if you ask me. So does that have you leaning towards dynasty when you become a dominant team, but you don't win it?
That's a good.
No, you're not a dynasty.
I think
you're not.
You've got to start with a championship.
You have to win a championship.
Even in the salary cap, where you have to win 4.
It doesn't matter.
4 rounds of playoffs, and everybody's got the same dollars to spend.
It doesn't matter. Because
the
Buffalo Bills.
To me,
would we consider the Buffalo Bills a dynasty? No, they never won it. They went 4 in a row. They never won it. Right or wrong? You look at the Utah Jazz.
Well, that's different because they never won it. The Panthers now, we're working off of 2 titles, so they've got a couple titles for you. They're okay. I'm not going to say what they're doing to the box, but they are doing something to that box that we're not allowed to say.
Okay, another team here.
Championships. Cha-ching.
Another
Cha-ching.
team here. If you look at this, is why the Miami
By the
Heat.
way, you can't say check. You can't say check the box. You can't say that.
Banned on the program.
It's totally banned. You can't say a team like the Miami Heat. They're not a dynasty. Yeah, they won 2 in a row, but they never get that 3rd. They won in 06, but end up they went 4 in a row, I think, but only won 2 out of the 4.
Won 2 of 4.
Exactly. So they're not considered a dynasty.
That's an interesting one too, right?
My
4
definition,
straight finals winning 2. That's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, but you
don't want to use the D word.
You can't use it because they didn't win 3.
My definition is not as rigid as my friend Mark Lazarus is, who again tweeted last night that you have to win 3 consecutive championships to be considered a dynasty. And it does feel like the Hall of Fame discussion. We have this every year in multiple sports. Some people will say the Hall of Fame is too big. There are a lot of players who belong in the Hall of Very Good, but not in the Hall of Fame. Well, by Mark's definition, the only teams in major North American professional sports who would qualify as a dynasty are the Los Angeles Lakers in the early 2000s with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant.
The Bulls.
The Chicago Bulls on 2 separate occasions.
The Bulls.
The late 90s to 2000 New York Yankees. Sorry, Willie. The Islanders of the early to mid 80s. They won 4 consecutive Stanley Cup titles. The Canadiens in the mid to late 70s. So there are very few dynasties, and that's, I guess, the definition. If that is a special word, dynasty, and you want it to be an exclusive club, you can set the definition as win 3 consecutive titles. Again, I'll use some recent examples in the NFL. I do consider the Kansas City Chiefs of today a dynasty. 5 Super Bowl appearances in 6 years, 3 championships. I would consider that a dynasty. The Patriots, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, then 3 more within 5 years. I would consider that a dynasty.
Gotta be.
So I guess
the 49ers of the 80s, would we think that?
That's before my time.
What did they win? They didn't win 3 in a row.
They won 4 total, 2 in a row, and lost in the NFC Championship, going for the 3rd to a really good Giants team. That's
when the Giants won the Super Bowl.
But in the 80s, they were great every year.
But
they might have had 1 off year, but they were in it every year, and they won 4 titles in the 80s.
Yeah, but 4 titles. Because again,
with a lot of the same guys, right?
But because it was in that when there was no salary cap, really,
and that was pre-salary cap, no question.
But I mean, when you're looking at
Steelers,
true dynasty,
right, in the 70s,
did they win?
They won 4, but they never won 3 in a row. But
they're not considered. That's why it was so important.
By this definition, it wasn't a dynasty. But I think the Steelers of the 70s, come on.
But it was important. That's why it was imperative. That's why it was important to the Dallas Cowboys the last time that when they won back to back and they were trying to go for that 3rd one. Why everybody put so much emphasis. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I think they they exhausted themselves because they understood that winning 3 in a row, that puts them above the New England Patriots, above Tom Brady, and above Bill Belichick.
It's
Why?
a rare distinction.
Because
It's a
no
rare
one has
distinction,
done
3
it
in a row.
3
Yes.
in a row. I think they exhausted themselves from thinking that.
That's a great point. I'll throw this in there as well too. I think of these long runs like the Chiefs, the 80s 49ers with Joe Montana, the 70s Steel Curtain with Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Mean Joe Green. All of these extend way past 3 years. Like in a sense, if you just have 3 amazing magical years and you win 3 titles, by definition for Lazarus, that would be a dynasty. But to me, a dynasty would span a longer period of time, regardless if you ever won 3 in a row. As I think about it more, that's more impressive. Sustaining dominance for a long period that's way more than 3 years. I don't know exactly what number I would put on
3
it.
years is the dominance,
here's
though.
my definition.
But I'm talking about 6, 8, 10 years of being great every year.
Here's my loose definition, and I may refine it. I will try to refine it as we continue to have this conversation. But this is what my gut tells me. In order to be considered a dynasty, you have to win at least 3 championships within a 5-year span.
Okay.
That would be my definition. So the New England Patriots of 2001 through 2004 and 2014 through 2018, they would qualify.
And and in theory, you would still need to be a really good contender in the other years that you don't win it. Fair? Like if you went 0-16,
could you have missed the play? Well, obviously they didn't miss the playoffs a few times.
Didn't the Patriots the one year they didn't win the Super Bowl within that 3 and 4? Didn't they miss the playoffs?
They did, yeah.
So that's a good question. Like the
Chicago, but they were still good,
right?
They just missed the playoffs.
The Chicago Blackhawks with Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves. That's what 3 and 6. That may not
10,
meet
13, and 15.
That may not meet my definition.
Right.
So I think right now, and I am open to refining it, I think my definition to be considered a dynasty is that you have to win at least 3 championships within a 5-year span. They do not have to be back to back to back, but 3 within 5. To me, I think that is the definition that I would give for a dynasty. What's your definition? 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will continue this conversation and take your reaction coming up next. But before we do that, this week's Nashville's best deal is Body Rock. Plank, lunge, twist, and push your limits with Body Rock's dynamic muscle sculpting Pilates-inspired classes designed to rock your body to the core. Get half off a $50 gift card now at theGameNashville.com/deals to use at any of Body Rock's 4 Nashville locations while supplies last.
All right, let's talk F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. Give them a look. And that's all we ask on this show. Just give them a look. Give them a chance because they're probably right smack in the middle of your community. Depending on where you live, they've got it pretty much covered. 20 locations in our listening area. And their motto is banking made easy on purpose. They love to get you in there, talk about your situation, and see where they can help you. Your business means more to them. They want to build a relationship with you, but not the kind of relationship where they're always in your face. It's how do they make things easier for you? The Smart Swipe debit card, business-to-business owner plans, if that's what your thing is. Maybe a HELOC for your family. Whatever it is, just find the nearest location and pay them a visit. myfmbank.com. That's myfmbank.com. And yes, we will take it to the bank Friday at 1:45, as we always do. Thanks to our friends at F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. Member FDIC.
Matthew, another cup. Did you feel like the road to this one was similar as the first one?
Not for myself personally. It was I didn't think this was possible, and I could have just, personally could have just like threw in the towel and just got myself fixed up and missed out. There were days that I wanted to do that, and I knew this group was too special and we had a chance, and I just am so lucky to be on this team with this group of guys, and just a special group, and we got to be a dynasty now. It's 3 years in a row finals, 2 championships. This team is so special, and I just Stanley Cup champion. This never gets old.
That was Matthew Tkachuk. We've got to be a dynasty now, by the way. Matthew Tkachuk revealed last night, because the best part about it's not the best part. One of the more entertaining parts of the end of the Stanley Cup final is when the players reveal all of the injuries that they've been dealing with. Matthew Tkachuk revealed that he sustained a torn adductor muscle and a sports hernia injury on the same side, and that the adductor muscle was torn from the bone.
I know he was on some meds. I know he was on some meds.
Big time meds.
Exactly.
Yes, but Matthew Tkachuk,
man,
the Panthers have got to be a dynasty now, as Lee Corso would say. Not so fast, my friend, because I'm not sure the Panthers are there. So my definition of what a dynasty is, and I came up with it on the fly, to be honest with you, is that you have to win at least 3 championships within a 5-year window. So by my definition, there are only 5 dynasties in NFL history. The 1970s Steelers, the 1990s Cowboys, the 2000s Patriots, the 2010s Patriots, and our current Kansas City Chiefs.
I do think we should make this point as we continue to hone in on what our definition of a dynasty is. The Panthers were good enough to win the Stanley Cup with Matthew Tkachuk, arguably their best player, their most well-known player, playing on one leg. And he really didn't do a whole lot in the journey. He had his moments, especially in the Cup final. He made some big plays.
Yes, near the end.
And it reminds me of the Lightning in, I think it was 2021, where Steven Stamkos, I think, played 1 shift in the entire playoffs. He scored a goal on the shift, but they won it without him, right? They were that good. So that is how good these teams are. And they were using a couple of little ingredients that they have in the NHL, the lack of state income tax, which has been talked about a lot, and the ability to use LTIR to your advantage. So Tkachuk says it's a dynasty. Lazarus would disagree.
Congratulations to Seth Jones.
Yes, that was
former
nice.
Predators defenseman who was acquired by the Panthers near the trade deadline because Matthew Tkachuk was on long-term injured reserve. And it was great to see him hoist the Stanley Cup.
And it also shows you, and this might give some hope to the Predators, who, by the way, Jimmy Shapiro has put his odds out for next year's Stanley Cup. Not wasting any time. We'll have to ask you guys what you think the Predators' odds of winning the Stanley Cup are, according to Jimmy. But this should give you a little bit of hope for bounce backs. Seth Jones, for how many years, Adam, has been in relative oblivion playing for a bad team where a lot of people were saying, Seth Jones, he's just not that good. Like he had the label of being overpaid, right? Which was very fair. He was making a buku of money, but floundering on a really bad team. He goes to Florida. Suddenly, he becomes arguably, outside of Gustav Forsling, maybe their best defenseman, right? I don't know. Do they win it without Seth Jones? I don't know. But it just shows you that you can come back. It's the mix of players you're with. It's how you're used. There's a lot of variables that can make a guy look like it. There was an article during the middle of the season hammering Seth Jones. And Seth Jones was saying, look, I get it. He was getting booed by the Blackhawks. And I think it was Lazarus that wrote the article.
Yeah, but I'm sure, Matthew Tkachuk, when he said we should be a dynasty, I don't think he really meant. He was kind of hesitant himself. Are we a dynasty? We should. Should we be in the talks of being?
Get on some sort of talk shows to talk about it.
Are we? Can we be in a conversation to be in a dynasty? To be a dynasty? No, you can't. You just repeat it. That's all you did.
Okay,
you repeat it. I know you went three in a row, but you only won 2 out of the 3. So again, that's not a dynasty to me. You got to win. There has to be that. I agree with you, Adam. That 3 and 5, or it has to be flat out 3 in a row when you're talking about a true dynasty. Again, I just think that's why there has been only in modern day age of sports, there are only been a few teams that have been able to, accomplish that feat because it's so hard.
Let's run through our text line driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Huffy and Dixon says, I win 3 chili cook-offs in 5 years. 3 and 5 sounds like a dynasty to me. By my definition, Huffy, you are a chili cook-off dynasty. 3 and 5 years.
Are the rules different in a chili cook-off?
I don't know.
They have to be.
It's a lot of chili.
Are there other participants, or are you just a lone person?
Philip on
I've
our
been
text.
to some chili cook-offs that had a lot of people there.
Was there 3 people? Was there 2? Just you and your cousin?
I was a judge, and so I sampled a lot of chili, and that made it for a very interesting day when I got home.
So if it's in a chili cook-off, if there's only 2 competitors, are you considered a dynasty? Exactly. Yeah.
Philip on our text line says, "Are the Spurs a dynasty? They won
That's a
5
great one.
over a 15
Yeah.
You just
year
had a picture
span."
of-
to bring up was
And
Spurs.
You
They
just
won-
had a picture of Tim Duncan, maybe. Think of
Yes.
that.
Philip says they won 5 over a 15-year span and always maintained a dominant power the years they didn't.
I say yes. To me,
5 in a
when you-
15-year span.
I believe so.
But I would say
Never bad.
yes, because they won back-to-back in those 15 years. I think they did twice in those 15 years. They may have done it 3 times, won back-to-back championships. And they may have been 3 in a row to a NBA Finals, won it during that period as well. So I'm sure they were in position possibly to have the true definition of a dynasty is like a 3-peat.
So
But I know they won twice
so
in a
the total
row.
is 99, 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2014. Those are the years they won the
So
finals.
they're spread out.
You could say
But it's a lot of the same guys.
you could say 03, 05, and 07. It's in
Yeah.
a 6-year span,
Yeah.
but it's just like you could say that part was the dynasty. for them.
But based upon Adam, it has to be 5.
That's
Exactly,
that's
yeah.
my
In a
only.
5 year?
That's only my definition.
Exactly. So Adam wouldn't consider them a
Well,
dynasty.
I feel like we need to have a little bit of fluidity, flexibility in our definition.
One
I don't think we
texter,
need to be so rigid.
one texter says Nick Saban in Alabama dynasty. That is true because
Yes.
Alabama won in 2009, 2011, and 2012. That's 3 and 4.
Yeah.
They're in.
There you go.
Alabama does count.
Well, and that brings up another question: is college, where we know the flow of talent is
Mhm.
different, is that a different standard than the major league pro level?
Now, what was UConn? UConn won back-to-back, but did they go 3 out of the 4 years?
UConn basketball.
Yeah, men's basketball. I'm not talking
No.
about women's. They should be a dynasty, right?
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and UT. They
Yeah.
were a dynasty
UConn
at one
won
point.
in 1999, 2004, 2011, 2014, 2023, and 2024. So no.
Okay, 23 and 24. They didn't go before. They skipped like.
TD said if you count the Spurs, you have to count the 49ers as
Got it.
Yeah, I got to
dynasty.
count the 49ers.
49ers.
81,
That's a
88,
dynasty.
89, 94.
That's a
Yes.
dynasty. That's a dynasty.
But
70s
everybody
Steelers, dynasty.
has their definition of a dynasty.
I know.
Adam, he would fit in Adam's category more than likely. But Lazarus, mine a little bit. Nah, yeah, outside the box.
Okay,
maybe.
here's another one to just float out there. Okay, early 70s Dolphins,
Mhm.
3 consecutive Super Bowls, 1-2. Really good on either side,
Mm-mm.
but maybe by the end of the 70s, not quite as good.
But did they get another one within that 5th year?
Nope.
They won
They're
2
not a
within a
dynasty.
5-year. They won 2 within 3
Yeah.
and 2 within 5.
Yep. So no.
Not for me. Mike from Gallatin is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Mike, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call. So my thought process is that when creating a dynasty, why can't we just chunk off like a certain smaller chunk of a timeline for a team? So the Spurs, I'm from Texas. I know all about that team, for example. Greg Popovich has had that team strong for the entirety of his career, so it seems. But like, I don't know if you could say that like from when he started coaching till the end, it's been a continual Spurs dynasty. The Tim Duncan, David Robinson era, the Twin Towers, that was a dynasty. Them putting them together and carried that through to the Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. That time when they're in their primes, that would be where I would consider the dynasty, because you have people going back to and referencing, and like when you're talking about history books, or you're talking about great moments in the NBA, like it has to be something that you have to be able to go back and like other people are going to be able to talk about it down the line. Like, again, no disrespect to what Florida's doing right now, but the average casual fan could not tell you who the coach is outside of maybe Kachuk and maybe a couple of the guys, who the players are and things like that. But they could tell you who Ovechkin is, if you want to get into that part, or Gretzky. Like, it has to be like those specific things that kind of tie you in there with that. But I feel like the Spurs, you could chunk apart their seasons and how long that Duncan and Robinson were together, and then Duncan, Tony, and Manu, and make it to smaller windows and make that considered a dynasty, as opposed to just having to look at it as a full body of work.
Thank you for the call, Mike.
It's a good take.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, listen, the longevity of dominance, whether, but there has to be championships in that process. Like, you look at New England. No, they didn't win 3 in a row, but the dominance was there.
Again, 3 and 4 the first time around, 3 and 5 the second time
exactly.
around.
So the dominance was still there. So, but then you look at other teams that may have won, 2 or 3 or 2 and 6 years, and but they were dominant. Say, like, in the end, let's take the AFC and NFC. There was a point where the Cleveland Browns, the old school, you remember the old school Cleveland Browns, they missed the Super Bowl 2 years in a row because a fumble, and they were a dominant team in the AFC for a little bit longer than that, but they only had an opportunity to put themselves in a position to win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl twice. Not many people consider them a dynasty, even though they were a damn good team in that span. So dynasties, I would tend to lean more toward your definition, Adam. If you give me 3 and 5 years, you're dynasty.
I want a sliding scale. I want a case by case. Give me the numbers, and I'll say yes, dynasty, or no dynasty.
Because it can't just be dominant.
I don't want to be held back by these rigid definitions.
Well, if you have some suggestions for Willie, 615-737-1025. Call us.
I'll
text
put my
us.
stamp on it or not.
We'll do Judge Willie Dynasty Court with Judge Willie. Let us know. 615.
Here's one to ponder during the break.
Okay.
The suit, Chase McCabe. 1990s and then bleeding into the 2000s Braves.
Okay.
One World Series, but I think the number was 14 consecutive division championships and multiple World Series appearances, perennial trips deep into the playoffs. Dynasty, no dynasty.
615-737-1025. Call us, text us. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tune into ESPN 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Iowa. Pre-game begins at 6:20 and the first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. D. Mace Vingan and Donick 102.5, 106.3 the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan attempting to nail down the definition of dynasty. It's difficult. So before the break, Willie, via Chase McCabe, you brought up the Atlanta Braves, who won 14 consecutive division titles. Within that span, correct me if I'm wrong, Willie and Chase, I know you're listening. Within that span, 5 pennants, 1 title.
Pennant, meaning they won the National League.
The National League.
So, yes, in 91, 92, 99. Is there one of the World Series that they lost?
I have to look. I am not a Braves historian.
Yes, yeah, 96. Yeah, so 5 pennants, 1 World Series. And I think 14 consecutive division
That is correct.
So
14 consecutive division
And
titles.
if you want to, again, drill down, got to the LCS a bunch of times. It's like we look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs' run of getting to the AFC Championship games is very impressive, right? When's the last time the Chiefs weren't in the AFC Championship game? That's an amazing run.
It's been a minute.
The Braves had a similar kind of thing. Like, they weren't losing in the division round very often in that. They were winning the division round, and they were getting to the LCS. You had to go through Atlanta to win it. And they were there so many times. We're talking about 14 years.
The Chiefs have not. The last time the Chiefs did not make it to at least the conference title game is 2017.
That's pretty remarkable. And the Braves, I think, had a similar sort of just, oh my God, here's the Braves again. Like, I remember the great Joe Morgan used to do the Sunday night broadcast. Hall of Fame player. He was the great announcer. ESPN Sunday. He goes, the Braves night may not win it, but if you want to win it, you got to go through Atlanta, is what he would say every year, because they were just so consistent. To me, that is impressive. Dynasty, that's borderline. I do think that I could argue strongly, and I would say 51%, 49%. I would argue dynasty. That run.
The Spurs do
Bobby
qualify.
Cox Braves.
The Spurs are an interesting case study. The Spurs would qualify under my definition.
Yeah. It's no doubt.
Right, because they won 3 titles within
dynasty.
Yes, they won 3 titles within 5 years between 2003 and 2007.
That gets my stamp. That's 100%.
Yes.
Now, here's another one on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Devin and Dixon, would the late 90s through early 2000s Detroit Red Wings be considered a dynasty? And I have pulled this up.
I would say mid. I would wind it back to 95.
Okay, so that would be
lost in the finals.
So they between 1995 and 1998, they went to the final 3 times in 4 years and won twice. Then they went back to the final and won it in 2002. So they won 3 titles in 6 years.
Dude, we can't keep pushing the goalpost. We can't, man.
But they continued. But they were good. They were good before,
3
starting
and 5
before that,
years.
and they were really good after that for a while. Okay, look, can I introduce another little thing? If you lose to other great teams,
It
is that
doesn't
a
matter.
factor?
Nope.
That's not a factor.
It's not a factor. No.
Oh man,
You're supposed to be the greatest of the greats.
You got.
I have
no flexibility.
I have convinced Derek.
Give me some flexibility, DJ.
I have convinced Derek.
I've gone so far as to agree with Adam's, criteria. I'm not moving past that. I'm not pushing the goalpost. No, we're not pushing it.
Okay, so okay, hold on. Let me see if this works. Well, that would work, right? The Showtime Lakers would be considered a dynasty,
No
right?
question.
Okay.
That's 100%.
Yes, the
Absolutely.
Showtime Lakers.
I even think the Celtics in the 80s
No.
would be right along the side of
Hold
it,
on.
a dynasty
no.
as well. I think making it to the finals and being in the mix year in and year out. If I say the Braves are 51% dynasty, so I'm giving them the nod, I would have to say the Celtics with Bird with 3 titles. And this is, again, with my caveat, who are you losing to? They lost to the Lakers a couple of times. They beat the Lakers.
3 titles in 6 years
well.
between 1981 and 1986.
But you extend it before and after, too. You can go back to Larry Bird's rookie year, just the same as Magic, right? They came in at the same time. And you extend it to early 90s.
We're trying to push that goal. What would be?
I'm pushing
because you got dynasty. What is underneath dynasty? What would we call that?
Well, what did Lazarus say?
He called it
a run of dominance.
Yes, that's what it is. That's
Okay.
what they are. A run of dominance. They're not the Boston Celtics had a run of dominance. The Detroit Pistons had a run of dominance.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the Isaiah days. I'm talking about after when they repeated.
I would draw the line. I would put the Pistons, the bad boy Pistons,
Mhm.
just below the level of dynasty. I would put the Celtics and Lakers above the line of dynasty.
Yeah.
Multiple texters have mentioned the John Wooden UCLA Bruins.
Of course,
That's
they're a
an easy
dynasty.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's an
no-brainer.
easy one.
That's not.
But
a
for
difficult
this
one.
discussion, I think we're
keeping it to pro
focusing
sports.
with pro sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about Ben says? What does Derek think about the Kobe and Pau Gasol LA Lakers?
Oh, of course, they won 3 in a row.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Well, that-
they,
No,
they won
they
back
won
to
two.
back. Yeah,
They won
the
two.
Pistons
Yeah.
beat them in the.
They
Yes,
won
you're
back
right.
to back.
Oh,
you're
9 and
right.
10.
I was thinking about the Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah.
Kobe and Shaq.
I combined them and said Shobi, the Shobi Lakers, not to be confused with the
There you
Showtime
go. That's
Lakers.
what we're doing now.
Okay,
Joey.
so how would we define the Kobe era? Because the
How did
Kobe
Lazarus-
and Shaq.
Define it.
3 finals in a row is a run of dominance.
There you go. That's the
The
Lakers.
Kobe and Shaq Lakers were a dynasty.
Thank you.
The Kobe and Gasol Lakers were not a dynasty.
Thank you. I'm not moving my goalposts. I'm
But
not doing
Kobe,
it.
but Kobe and Phil Jackson are on both of those runs. So
No,
can
we
you
can't
combine
do
them?
that. No, Willie.
one big
no,
dynasty.
no,
One
Willie.
big dynasty.
No, we're not adding coaches into this. Okay, we're just saying teams.
So one
period.
texter
You,
says,
you
so
wouldn't
that
say that's all under one umbrella. Jerry West, Kobe Bryant, Phil Jackson,
we're just
Shaq.
creating this tree with so many branches on it.
Oh,
I
my
love it.
goodness.
Give me a forest of
And
dynasties.
so, okay, we gonna go. How about the Innsworth Tigers when they dominated in the 7th grade for like 3 years in a row? Come on.
Okay,
Or
hold
NBA
on.
when they dominated.
Multi-sport dynasty.
Hold on. Michael from Spring Hill says dynasty definition. I don't know if this is his definition or he got it from somewhere else.
Webster.
A team must win 3 championships in a decade. This is a firm foundation for what constitutes a dynasty in debating the best dynasties, the 80s 49ers, the 90s Cowboys, etc. This is where we can bring up number of Hall of Famers, win percentage, consecutive championship appearances. For example, the USC Trojans of the early 2000s were not a dynasty.
Again, I don't know. When we talk about dynasties, we don't talk about 10 years. We don't. We talk about 3 and 5 or really let's just break it down. We talk about 3 in a row. That's what people consider in the sporting world a true dynasty.
Well, at
if
least
you win,
My friend Mark
Yeah.
considers that a true dynasty.
when you
winning
win three in a row,
I am not as rigid as Mark.
that's a true dynasty. Now I've expanded my thought to say 3 out of 5, but I'm not 10 years, 3 and 10. No. What are you gonna say? Well, 6 and 20 years? No, it's 3 and 5 years or 3 in a row.
One texter says, "You guys keep talking about basketball, football, baseball, etc. How about NASCAR, golf, and bowling? I those are my blind spots. I'm sorry.
Bowling? Oh, bowling. Goodness.
Pete
How
Weber,
about bowling?
Pete Weber, not our friend Pete Weber, the other Pete Weber.
How about yo-yos?
Yeah.
How about tiddlywinks? How
How
about
about
darts?
How about hot dog eating?
Oh,
You know what? You know what?
We already
You
know.
know what?
no.
Dylan-
We already know.
Dylan and Antioch. Dylan and Antioch.
Just look at Adam.
Dylan and Antioch tweeted in
Oh,
our text
You had to bring
earlier.
up the hot dogs. You had to bring up.
I was going to bring it up
Come on,
anyway.
D-Mace.
I was going to bring it up anyway because Dylan and Antioch texted it earlier. Joey Chestnut must be an empire, and you're gosh darn right he is. That man is a one-man dynasty, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he
We were
is
having
an
a fun
empire.
debate, and
He
now
is
we got
an
the hot
empire.
dog.
You
What
got it
John
right.
says, so the Warriors are not a dynasty. Yes, they are. They won 3 and 4, right?
Yeah, 3 and 4.
The Golden State Warriors?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The
think you
Golden
gotta go
State
with that.
Warriors are a dynasty. Joey Chestnut is a one-man dynasty.
He's
All right,
a
how about
dynasty of his own.
Early 70s Oakland A's. 3 in a row.
Dynasty, done.
There you go. That's all you have to say.
But what I was going to say is that the unique thing about them is a little bit it was short change because Charlie Finley, the owner, kind of broke them up
Mhm.
sooner than they probably needed to be broken up because of the free agency
Start.
crazy stuff that was going on in baseball. So from about 1971 to 75, 76, they were really good, but they did win the 3 in a row. But before and after,
Mhm.
not so good.
But they still got the 3 in a row. So
They
by
got the
that-
3 in a row.
by our
So
definition,
any 3 in a row is automatic. Are we saying
yeah,
that?
that's automatic.
Automatic.
Any 3 in a row is
I
automatic.
mean, the Edmonton Oilers, the Gretzky Oilers, that would be a dynasty. They
Sure.
won 5 and 7, 84, 85, 87,
No brainer.
88, and 90.
Mhm.
So that is absolutely a dynasty. So again, I think I am setting my definition. Someone says, how about the Triple Crown winner in horse racing? Again, blind spot for me.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know a lot about the history of horse
Blind
racing.
period when it comes to that. Not even a spot.
Chuck does say that 1025, the game must be a dynasty.
No doubt. No
You darn
diggity.
sure we are.
Yes, absolutely.
Ongoing.
One texter says, so the 90s Bills wouldn't qualify? No.
No, they didn't even win the championship.
didn't win.
If they had won it once, then I would
No.
consider it. I would consider it.
Willie, seriously.
Just because
Willie.
four Super Bowls in a row.
I would love
is-
to be in
is
your class. I would love to be in your class.
4
Just
Super
turn in
Bowls
one-
in a row.
Just do good on one test. I'm good. One test, I'm passing Willie's class.
One test of a
Look,
90, you're good
exactly.
to go.
I'm flattered. You want to be in my class? My class would be awesome. Let me just tell you. But
Absolutely.
my students would walk out of there remembering that class. Like,
Okay.
yes, I remember having Professor Donick. He was awesome.
Let's
That's what's one.
before we get to Jonathan Hutton, Michael and Madison. If a team was bad beforehand, three-peats a championship, and then goes back to being terrible, say massive playoff droughts before and after, is that a dynasty?
Yes, it's still a dynasty.
Because they
You
have the
won 3 in
three-peat.
a row. Yes. No matter how you slice
Three-peat
it.
has to put you over the top.
Yes.
Got to
Yes.
give it to you.
That I
That's why Kansas City
Absolutely
wanted
agree.
it so bad. That's why New England wanted it so bad. Because no matter how many championships you win, once you get that three-peat, you just about top everybody else.
so for me to consider the Florida Panthers a dynasty, and what they have done has been so incredibly impressive, an absolute buzzsaw in these Stanley Cup playoffs. They either need to win it again next year, or if they don't, they have to come back the following year and win it again. That would be 3 and 4. Or I guess
Yeah.
the year after that, because that would be 3 and 5. So you're almost there, Matthew Kachuk, but you're not quite there. 615-737-1025. Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow will join us coming up next. We'll rope him into this conversation. We'll also discuss something we're going to discuss a little bit later in the program. Diego Pavia taking aim at Tennessee. I would love to know how Willie feels about this, Coach Willie specifically. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D. Mace Fingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, soon to be joined by Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. I just stumbled across this picture. It's going to be one hell of a summer for Brad Marchand, not just because he's a pending unrestricted free agent and he's probably going to get paid. But here's a picture of him. He's got a cigar in his mouth. He's got a beer tucked into his elbow, like in between his elbow and his side. He's got a spiked iced tea in one hand and a coffee in the other.
Marchand is living his best life. I love it.
He's ready.
Did any of those guys sleep last night?
Oh, no.
No.
Marchand,
Man.
wow.
They're going to have one hell of a summer. If you thought last summer was the summer of the Florida Panthers, there's a famous dive bar in Fort Lauderdale called the Elbow Room. And the Panthers have adopted this bar as their go-to. And after they won the Stanley Cup last year, all the players went there and they were sloshed, obviously. And the fans there were sloshed as well. First of all, they took the Stanley Cup for a dip in the Atlantic Ocean.
Good.
I believe Matthew Tkachuk ran out there with the Stanley Cup. Good thing it didn't float away. But I do specifically remember a clip from the Panthers after party where I think it was Matthew Tkachuk. So Elbow Room has a balcony. So Matthew Tkachuk and another Panthers player were on the balcony, and there was a Panthers fan, at ground level outside, and they poured a beer from the Stanley Cup over the balcony into this guy's mouth as best they could.
Man.
What percentage of the beer do you think was consumed? And how much
probably
made contact,
1% of the beer.
Yeah.
1%.
I was
beer.
going to say at least 80% ended up on the guy.
Yeah.
Not in his mouth. But you know what? He doesn't care.
Contest to judge.
He was having the time of his life. So the Florida Panthers, at least to me, not yet a dynasty. Josh on our text line says, so what's the opposite of a dynasty? Where you're the worst team 3 years in a row? The Titans are headed there.
That's a bad team. That's what that is.
Yeah, we don't have a name for we don't have a name for that yet.
Other than being a bad team. The Squirbies. I don't know. That's not even a word. It just sounds like bad.
Well, in the movies,
Mm-hmm.
when you win a big award, it's called, it's an Oscar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there are the Golden Raspberry Awards, which are known as the Razzies, which is a parody award show honoring the worst of cinema. So
So this would be the worst of sports.
I also think there's in the worst of cinema, it's good, bad. There's some movies that you just know are really bad, but you kind of enjoy watching.
Like them. Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's the bad
like
where you're just I just can't watch this. This is unwatchable. I have to turn it. I can't get through this movie. Like a movie that you would get up and leave. Back when people would go to the movie theater, did you ever walk out of a movie just saying, I'm just not interested in this movie?
No. When I had to, no. I just sat through it.
Not even slip into another theater and watch something else. I don't think I've ever done that either.
Well, if I snuck in my younger days,
asleep in some movie theater.
Oh, see, that's what I tend to do. If it's not good, I just fall asleep. Yeah, but I'm getting my money's worth in that seat.
One texter says, "Dynastically bad is what the Titans are."
Okay,
but here's something.
We'll take that.
We're in the upside down.
Yes. Here's something that I wonder about. So I've read a few articles now about NFL teams going worst to first because it happens almost every year, right? A team that finishes last in its division finishes first in its division the following year. It actually did not happen last season, if I recall correctly. The Houston Texans did it a couple of years ago with CJ Stroud. So, of course, the Titans are among those teams. And here's a question I have. Instead of saying, what are the Titans' odds of going from worst to first? Because I feel like that's the easy conversation to have. Here's the conversation I want to have. Which NFL teams can you confidently say have worse odds than the Titans of going worst to first? And I'll give you your contenders other than the Tennessee Titans. The San Francisco 49ers, the Chicago Bears, the New England Patriots, the New Orleans Saints, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New York Giants, and the Cleveland Browns.
You just whip them off. There's a couple in there. Who do the Titans rank above?
So
Who?
So USA Today and ESPN both did this exercise,
Right.
ranking the teams from the best chance to the worst chance. USA Today had the Titans with the second best chance, behind only the San Francisco 49ers. Niners, Titans, Bears, Patriots, Saints, Raiders, Giants, Browns. ESPN had the Titans fifth, behind the Niners, Bears, Patriots, and Saints. Then the Titans, then the Raiders, Giants, and Browns. So both lists have the Raiders, Giants, and Browns 6th, 7th, and 8th. So which team are you confident, or teams can you confidently say have worse odds than the Titans of going worst to first?
Raiders. Let me see. I would tend to think, because the Raiders, they hadn't found their quarterback.
Well, they did acquire Geno Smith.
Yeah, you're right. They did acquire Geno Smith.
They have Brock Bowers.
Yes.
They
But
drafted
even with Brock
Ashton
Bowers
Genty.
last year, they didn't have a quarterback. They still were bad. They were 4-13. But you're right. They got Geno Smith. They got a new head coach. So and Pete Carroll. So
Hotshot rookie running back.
yes,
Ashton Genty.
Ashton Genty. So I would tend to believe that the Raiders, I think the Raiders have a higher odds than the Titans, even though they play in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs.
I think the only team I'm confident in that will have worse odds than the Titans of going worst to first is the Browns. I think that's the only one off the top of my head. The Giants is interesting. The Giants are interesting to me.
I'm not going down that road again after what I did last
Yeah. Willie, you may want to stay out of this one
I
with the
took
Giants.
the Giants to make the playoffs last year. I'm not making that mistake again.
But
I'm with you. I tend probably the Cleveland Browns.
I think they are the only team out of the other worst to first candidates that I can confidently say have worse odds of doing it than the Titans. The Browns. I think that's it. You also have to factor in division as well.
Yeah.
So the Bears, they have to contend with the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions. The Saints have to factor with the Falcons, Buccaneers, and Panthers. So maybe
the Saints may. I can see the Saints,
but with Tyler Shuck at starting quarterback,
I don't know.
See,
yeah,
I would not. I don't like their chances.
To me, I think it's the Browns. The Giants again are interesting.
But let's go back to the AFC South.
Okay.
Is there a scenario because I think we would agree, yes, where the wheels just fall off the other three teams?
Absolutely.
Like in this dream thing, it wouldn't be that you're winning like the NFC North. Like last year, it was just a loaded division. It would be you get better, and the other three teams just have a lot of things go really bad. And that could happen. If you look at the Jags, the Colts, and even the Texans, it could happen.
So this is what USA Today writes about the Titans. Again, they have the Titans ranked second behind the San Francisco 49ers.
I'm surprised.
What's working?
Aren't we surprised they're that high?
On this list, yes.
Very surprised.
ESPN had the Titans fifth out of 8. But this is what USA Today said. Quote, Cam Ward might not have cleared the cliched bar of a generational, which I can say because it's quoted here, generational quarterback prospect, but it's easy to see why Titans brass figured he could be a transformative figure for the franchise. And combining high-end pocket poise with unique out-of-structure ability, he can immediately recalibrate an offense that was too frequently thrown off tilt by Will Levis's back-breaking mistakes in the face of pressure. The offensive line also looks to be as solid as it has been in years thanks to the signings of Dan Moore and Kevin Zeitler. New special teams coordinator John Fossil, who is widely regarded as one of the league's most innovative minds in his concentration, should clean up the rampant mistakes that further doomed last year's team. With the Jaguars and Colts undergoing their own major adjustments and the Texans yet to assert themselves as truly dominant, the AFC South seems more open than many other divisions.
And I think that's what it ultimately boils down to, is no matter how improved the Las Vegas Raiders are, they still are in the division with the Kansas City Chiefs
and the Chargers
and the Chargers
and the Broncos
and the Broncos. No matter what you think of the New York Giants, they're still in the division with the Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning Super Bowl champs. They're still in the division with a surging Washington Commanders. So there's the difficulty is a little bit harder to go from worst to first. But then you look at the Titans, even though Houston has been the top dog the previous 2 seasons, they haven't been the top dog by a wide margin. So it is conceivable to me that the Titans could theoretically even leapfrog the San Francisco 49ers based upon the division. Not necessarily because I think the Titans are better than San Francisco. It's based on the division that they're in.
So on ESPN, Willie's guy, Aaron Schatz, wrote this article. He has the Titans 5th out of 8 on this list. And he writes, again, I must repeat what I wrote about the Saints. You can't expect rookie quarterbacks to have good seasons. Yes, this is even true for first overall picks like Cam Ward. After all, Chicago's Caleb Williams finished 28th out of 32 qualifying quarterbacks in QBR last season. Then again, Will Levis was dead last out of 32 qualifying quarterbacks in QBR last season. So even a below average season for Ward will likely be an improvement for Tennessee. Like New Orleans, the Titans have bigger issues on the other side of the ball. Their defense projects at 30th in DVOA. There's a lot of hope around L'Jarius Sneed bouncing back from injury. I'm not sure about that. Or a big season from unheralded additions such as edge rusher Draymond Jones. But the Titans really didn't gain much defensive talent this offseason and haven't drafted many contributors in recent years. They haven't used a first-round pick on a defensive player since Jeffrey Simmons in 2019.
Just so people know, DVOA, when you hear that, like, what the heck is DVOA? DVOA is just basically a percentage of how much of a percentage better are you than average, or how much minus percentage you are below average. That's just really what it is, DVOA. So it sounds complicated, and the formula is very complicated. I couldn't tell you what it is, but it's just a percentage. Like if you are 10% DVOA on offense, you're 10% better than the league average,
which is good.
And it's switched for defense. I don't want to confuse people, but a minus DVOA is good. So if you're minus 10 in DVOA, you're 10% better than league average.
But I mean, if you look at it, again, I go back to Houston has been able to win this division because this division is bad
by default.
Yes. Now,
and
Houston,
that's with a big last year, for example, a big drop off.
Absolutely,
CJ Stroud, a big drop off from year 1 to year 2 in his numbers, but they still won the
division.
They
still won the division at 10-7. Now, Indianapolis right behind at 8-9. But I look at this division again. I look at it and say the easiest path to a worst to first just may be the AFC South. I'm not sure San Francisco. Yes, they've re-signed Purdy. You gotta what's his name? The running back, running back for San Francisco. Why am I forgetting this? McCaffrey. I was about to say McAllister. McCaffrey.
Deuce McAllister.
Yeah, exactly.
He was pretty good.
McCaffrey. You don't know if he's gonna finish out the season. So to me, they're going to have a difficult time because the LA Chargers are getting much better. That will be a much better team this year than they were last year because it's been proven that Jim Harbaugh, once he gets his teeth into a team, an organization or program, they improve the next following season. After his first season going to a second season. So that's going to be difficult in itself. And I'm just talking about the LA Chargers. I'm not talking about the rest of the teams within the division. Again, not the LA Chargers. Yeah.
Yep.
But when you look at the Titans, it's not much that they have to go through to get to the top spot. Again, Houston's going to be good. I get that. But it's not like they're going through the Pittsburgh Steelers,
right?
The Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens.
Correct. There's not that big bad in the AFC South, a final boss, as it were. Like you have.
I meant to say the Rams and not the Chargers. I meant to say the Rams and McVay in the NFC West.
Chargers, Rams.
Yeah.
No. They play in the same building, right?
Yeah.
I
think so.
Mistakes happen.
Yeah.
One texter says, does anyone really think the Patriots will win the division against the Bills? The New England Patriots, speaking of awards, Razzies and Oscars and such, the New England Patriots have earned the Adam Vingan team that gets hyped up to an absolute extreme in the offseason who will ultimately disappoint everybody award.
It's not Indianapolis?
I was about to say the award is the Indianapolis Colts honorary offseason award. I'll come up with a better name. But yeah, I'm not sure I buy the hype with the Patriots. I know they made a lot of moves, and there's the Mike Vrabel factor, all of those things. Again, the division plays a big role in it. I can't see the Patriots overtaking the Bills. Actually, speaking of top teams in the NFL, from Adam Schefter, former Packers cornerback Jair Alexander has signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens. He turned down more to be in Baltimore with his former college teammate, Lamar Jackson. So Jair Alexander getting that Ravens rub, going to Baltimore after being let go by the Packers.
And listen, they're a good team. Now, whether they put it together and finally ultimately win, it seems like one year is this, last year it was the drop pass, in the end zone, sort of reminiscent, Willie, to the old Cowboys when I know it wasn't the Super Bowl, but you had the drop touchdown. What was the tight end's name from Randy? Was it from the Cowboys that dropped it at number 88 that dropped the pass in the end zone?
Way back when?
Yeah.
Oh, Jackie Smith.
Yeah. Was it Jackie Smith?
Yeah.
Yes, Jackie Smith. So they had a Jackie Smith moment, but in the AFC Championship game. So again, they have two really good corners in Humphreys and a kid out of Clemson. I forgot his name. Wiggins. Is it Wiggins? Yeah.
Wiggins, yep.
Wiggins. Those two guys are pretty good. Now you add a Jair Alexander into that culture. Never mind what he did, in Green Bay, and it was good. And he had some troubles this past season. I'm sure I think he was injured.
Yes.
Some of it.
Did have a nice pick six against Will Levis, though.
When you go into that Baltimore Ravens build, it's just something changes. Something changes or something gets enhanced once you walk in there. So, I'm sure it'll work out there, but, good for them.
Willie, you have something that you want David James to play?
Oh, yes, if he can get it. He brought up Jackie Smith.
Comeback.
It's a great Vern Lundquist call. This from Super Bowl 13, which I remember vividly as a kid because I was young. It was one of the first Super Bowls that I watched live, and it was a great game. It was the Terry Bradshaw versus Roger Staubach, and it was Franco Harris and Drew Pearson. Like it was the great characters. And you referred to Jackie Smith. There was it was a shootout, pretty much. The final score was 35-31. And Jackie Smith was a veteran tight end that was wide open in the end zone. He dropped the easiest touchdown ever. And he just freaked out on the field.
Yeah.
And Vern Lundquist had a great call. But you brought me down memory lane here. Let's see how quick David's skills are.
It's third down and 3. Dallas at the Pittsburgh 10. Roger back to throw. Has a man open in the end zone. Caught. Touchdown. Dropped in the end zone. Jackie Smith all by himself. Oh, bless his heart. He's got to be the sickest man in America.
And yes, he probably was.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. Bless his heart.
Oh, bless his heart.
Even Vern was saying, bless your heart back then.
615-737-1025. We will be joined by Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Joined, as we are every Wednesday, by Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow on Outkick. So, Hutton, in the first hour,
Yes, sir.
we had a spirited discussion on how we would define a dynasty in the wake of the Florida Panthers winning their second consecutive Stanley Cup, 2 Stanley Cups in 3 seasons, and a final appearance in the year that they did not win the Stanley Cup. My friend Mark Lazarus of The Athletic, he has a very rigid definition. He says that you have to win 3 consecutive titles in order to be considered a dynasty. Mine is not as rigid, and I actually was able to convince Derek of my definition, which is that you have to win at least 3 championships within a 5-year span in order to be considered a dynasty. How would you define it? And are the Florida Panthers a dynasty?
See, I was no, not yet. I would say, man, so let's say the Chiefs. The Chiefs got to 3 and 4, right? And they won 2 of the 3, but they got to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. That was, to me, that was the run that they were going on a dynasty run. I think it's right there for me, and especially in hockey, So I was very quick to say no. They are as close as any sport to win back-to-back and have the appearances that you're talking about and not be. But I think it's 3, and I think it's over a span of about 4 to 5 years. Yeah. And I think it's about the appearances and how close you are. Not if you lose, but how you lose the one, and then what you do in the other 2 and how dominant you are.
Well, that beats Willie's definition, I think.
So you're like me, Hutton. You're not going to be pinned down by rigid definitions. It's a little bit more of you know it when you see it, right?
Yeah, yes, you do. But it again, it is 3. I think it's 3 appearances in 5 years, 4 years. But again, like it's not like you limped into it and had like a backup quarterback play in one of those 3, right? Like it is the consistency. And I also think just again the schedule and the grueling grind that is the NHL, especially in that tournament. I think they're right there, and you can make the case for 2 for the NHL.
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't vote that way though.
And we were discussing like, okay, can it include like just if not the 3-peat or the 3 and 5 years, can it involve dominance within your conference? Because we brought up the Atlanta Braves and how they were dominant for a long time, but it only equated to 1 or 2 World Series.
One World Series.
One World Series. So are they considered a dynasty? Yeah, they dominated, but ultimately they didn't win it all.
I don't.
They won it, but
far
once.
Down the totem pole here. I got to get pretty far down to get to divisions instead of championship division titles. Like I mean, if we're only talking, dynasties of a division, like that. But I don't think we ever get to that debate at the bar. So if we're just going by bar rules, this is titles. This is titles, baby, and it's about producing when it matters for the championship, and not the not the regional, but the championship, the title.
Now, Hud, we're going to discuss Diego Pavia, in a little bit, but I want to ask you about it because obviously, whether I'm sure you've heard or either saw his interview on Bussin' with the Boys, and his bravado. And his stance on, who he is as an athlete and who he believes the Vanderbilt Commodores, ultimately will be as a team. What do you think of this confidence? Because we haven't seen this in Vandy at all since I've followed Vandy. I haven't seen a guy so confident in what he can do, and not just that, but confident in the program that he's in.
It is. I think it's imperative that Vanderbilt has that guy. Quite frankly, and he chooses Vandy, and I don't care what he says or how confident he is. The dude stayed. So, I mean, he could have gone anywhere he wanted to, and he stayed. I'm glad he's that confident. I love it, and the fact that he went to Clark Lee and said, "Hey, I'm your guy. We're time to win some titles." And then had the year that they had out of nowhere. It really felt out of nowhere. coming off of the schedule that they were off of, and then to see what they were up against, and then to have that first win against Virginia Tech, and then off and running they were. I don't think it's a bad thing at all, and quite frankly, college football could use more of him.
Well, here from a Vanderbilt perspective,
am I wrong on that?
Well, I think in terms of characters, we love characters like this. But from Vanderbilt,
what about staying though? What about being confident and staying? We're talking about Vanderbilt here,
no question.
Just in general at quarterback. I'm saying
no question. And I go back a couple of years. I really wish what Jerry Stackhouse might still be the coach if he could have gotten Scottie Pippen to buy into that and stay for one more year. Because I think that would have been a very good Vanderbilt team with Scottie Pippen, especially now we're seeing. But Scottie Pippen decided to just leave and go pro. He probably could have done let me cash in and just be the 1 year guy for NIL, which he didn't do. But here from a Vanderbilt perspective is what I would worry about a little bit.
Sure.
He snuck up on people last year. The team snuck up on people. They're not going to do that again. They weren't going to, regardless of what he said on this podcast. But now, especially what he said, and that is a precarious thing. It's like me as a Met fan. I know how much the Braves have dominated the Mets over the last few decades. And so I will never sit there and go, the Braves, they're done. The Mets have got them. I will never, ever say that. And last night was a great example. The Mets had the game won. Braves snuck up and win. And I'm worried that the Braves they've jump-started the Braves season. The Braves are too talented. They could be back in the mix. So I'm always wary for Vanderbilt. I always think the adage, and I remember my baseball coaches and basketball coaches would share this to both teams. These are two completely different teams, different sports, but they would say the same thing. We can't afford to sit here and think that we're good because we've had some success here, because we're not more talented than a lot of the teams we're playing. So if we allow ourselves to believe that, that's when we're going to get nailed. We're going to get beat by teams that we shouldn't be beaten by. We have to always be understanding that we have to play and click on all cylinders to be effective. And so I love the swagger of Pavia, but I hope he understands that he can't just think, hey, we were good last year. I could have made $4 million by going somewhere else, so we must be really good, because that's the trap.
I would be I'm 1,000% on board with you. But I have the evidence of last year. They beat Bama, and they turned around and went on the road and beat Kentucky. And that entire week, they did national interview after national interview.
Fair.
Pavia was a national headline. He's on Dan Patrick's show on a Thursday, and he's showing up, and he turns around and has that locker room ready to go on the road and beat Kentucky. That to me is the difference in, the Tennessee, the week of that game, fans weren't taking that lightly. They didn't sneak up on Tennessee last year, just the feeling of that week. Oh, we just can't lose this game. Just take care of it. That to me is, that's the difference in Pavia. And that's the difference in having that guy at Vandy. I'm totally fine with the argument. We can't have the guy that's like locker room bulletin board material, but I'm glad that Vanderbilt has that player that has everybody turning their heads. And they did it to Auburn. He's going for the Iron Bowl. He's talking that trash on again, that was the storyline last year, and he handled it really well. And did
it while he was hurt.
Did it while he was hurt.
Yeah.
And but the entire locker room gravitates towards him, and he's not like, I don't think he lets up on the he's dialed in even when he's getting all the hype. That was impressive to me. And again, I think it would have been very, very difficult for any team to beat Alabama, especially the way they did, in the historical manner that they did, and turn around and go on the road at Kentucky and not have a little letdown. And they went on it was a totally different game, and they were able to grind that game out. I thought that was impressive.
Hutton, I do want to ask you about something related to the WNBA. The Indiana Fever and Connecticut Sun last night had what I would describe as a chippy contest, to say the least. And, once again, Caitlin Clark is at the center of it all. And I was reading a column in the Washington Post by Candace Buckner with the headline, Caitlin Clark, a night of skirmishes and a WNBA product out of control. And
Out of control.
Buckner writes in part, quote, after a night of physical fouls and hurt feelings, the WNBA clearly has an officiating problem. Clark is the crossover celebrity. If officiating ever allows her to get injured, then the scariest place on earth just might be among the casuals rioting outside the league office. But it shouldn't take unbridled anger to awaken the WNBA. The league has a problem, and it better fix it before the whole product turns foul. Your thoughts?
Oh man. Okay. First part. The league, it sits back and lets this go on because this is like the Angel Reese 2.0, where the physical nature, the column of this is more of a headline than the discussion of this is more of a headline than the actual result of the game. Like the final score is not discussed. It's more or less like, are they going after Caitlin Clark?
Yes.
It's not an officiating problem. They would, if the league didn't want this, the officials would officiate this different. But again, it's clear they're being very physical with her. I would say this though: at some point, Caitlin Clark has to fight back, and then we start to see the real. At what point does she stand up and just pop somebody after this? I mean, we haven't seen that yet.
We have not.
Do you guys agree with this though? That I think, and it's getting talked about at the college level as well, that women's basketball, because the athletes continue to evolve at a rapid rate with height, with strength, it just the genetics of the whole thing, it's moving fast, and I think it's making it a tricky game to officiate. Do you guys think so? Like I had 20 or 30 years ago, the players were not as tall. Like there weren't people dunking. There weren't people who were 6'7", there's just a dilemma that I think you have, and it happens in men's basketball, of course. But I think it's there's not as much aerial stuff, so there's a lot of contact where you have to make some tricky decisions, and I think it sometimes gets lumped into we have an officiating problem. I just think it's a hard game to officiate.
Basketball. That's why Shaquille O'Neal had such a problem, because you had to officiate him differently. A foul for Shaq.
Right. He was on the cutting edge. Exactly. There had never been a player like that.
Absolutely.
Before.
So when you foul, what may seem like a hard foul may have just been, to Shaq, it felt like just a fly on me. And if Shaq didn't fall or do something, the refs didn't know how to call it.
Right. I will tell you exactly what our coach coached us to do against Shaq, because he was a bad free throw shooter. This was at LSU. Vanderbilt beat them twice. I was on the team both times. 0 points in the 2 games. Had one assist. I had a nice little run off, a nice little section off the bench in one of the games we beat them. Nice job by me. But good role play. I don't know what my plus minus was, but we would strategically, when he caught the ball on what we would call the medium post or on the low post, So if he got the ball on the block, we knew that he would turn and dunk the ball. We did not have anybody who, if he caught the ball that deep, you couldn't prevent him from dunking. So we would try to push him out to the medium post where he had to hit a jump hook, and he was pretty good at that. But you at least had a chance. Exactly. And we had a couple guys that were pretty good at doing it. Nobody was as big. But we were instructed, if he catches the ball in the low post, quote, take his arm off.
You had to.
You had to.
So big.
Because
you can't just foul him.
He would just take you right up to the rim and dunk you. You could, if you kind of just tried to strip at the ball, you had no chance. So you had to take his arm off. That changed the officiating.
And I think that's what's going on with women's sports. They haven't, seen, people don't look at basketball, women's basketball, and think physicality. Well, they are physical. And just because you don't want it to be physical doesn't mean they are not. And you got to officiate the game based on the girls that are out there now and the physicality that they have now. And when it comes to Caitlin Clark, I think it's just what we would deem as just a regular foul in the NBA. It's deemed as, they're trying to take her out. They're trying to do this. She's a physical player. She matches physicality with physicality. And a lot of times she flops or she gets fouled hard. But we can't say that. I don't think the WNBA has a problem. I think they're allowing these girls to be physical because nobody wants to see a finesse game. They just don't, especially because they tried to finesse game with the NBA. It didn't work. I mean, WNBA, it didn't work. Luckily, Caitlin Clark came along, and her shooting, along with the other physicality of the sport, has elevated it. More so her shooting. But the game is a little bit physical now, and they got to play her physical, because if they don't, it's gonna be threes raining across the gym all day and every day, and they understand that.
I'm all for the physical. I'm all for that, Mace. Like last night was different, with what that was. Look, I would say this about Shaq. Shaq would still. There were instances where it was tough to officiate Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq still got up and went after Charles Barkley after a tough foul. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there was some animosity there. There were the Jordan rules. The best player in the league. There were the Jordan rules. They're protect their own. I just think at some point Clark's going to have to say something or get up and do something if it's this egregious. And let me also be fair. She talks trash.
Oh, of course.
So there are verbal jabs that you don't hear that that are going to play a factor in this. It's part of the game, but also if the league wants to curtail this, they could. It's not like they couldn't do something about this with fines and end it. I mean, fines in that league mean something. So I just think last night with the different, the hip check, and then you have the shoulder, and then you have the behind, whatever it was. It's a storyline that is good for the league. It is. It's either Angel Reese and the rivalry there, or it's Caitlin Clark and whether or not the players hate her, or now it's the officials are out. They're too. Now the league does. It's all peripheral things that are about her game. She's very good. Well, she's second in the league right now in the odds to win the MVP. The ratings are what they are. She is the league in terms of the hype. So I mean, if you want the perception of, well, they're protecting her because she's the league, I think this is actually making it more likely people tune in again because you want to see the brawl for all. But again, the rivalry with Angel Reese continues because she got up the way she did after a take foul. If she stays on the floor and just doesn't do anything, it's just kind of okay. We're not talking about anything with that game. We're talking about Caitlin Clark being 4-1 head-to-head against her. That's pretty much it. That keeps it going, and so does this. That's where I come across on it. If they wanted to just split it in half and take half of the physical nature of what we saw out, they could. But they let that game go a little bit, clearly, for it to rise to that amount of friction.
Jonathan Hutton from Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow joining us as he does every Wednesday on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick. Hutton, great stuff as always. We'll chat next week.
Yeah, I think guys, do we have any other update on the WNBA in Tennessee with what we saw last fall with the announcement? You ever heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything.
No, there hasn't really been a whole lot.
No.
I heard Stephen A. Smith just in a long rant that did not have to do directly with the WNBA. He was talking about Ja Morant, but
oh yeah,
he mentioned it that they're trying to get it, but it seems like this wave clearly is not happening. But I think in time, when there's another wave, that there'll be another run.
And they have to expand. They don't have enough teams. But he's saying the Memphis is trying to get a team in FedEx Forum, right?
Yeah,
that's what Stephen A. would say. Okay,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I think it would be here or Clarksville. Throwing out there.
We'll chat next week, Hutton.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
615-737-1025. We mentioned Diego Pavia. He had a lot to say in an interview with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton on Bussin' with the Boys, and we'll discuss that coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Vanderbilt's going to run Tennessee after this year. Like, this is going to be the new staple of like college football is going to happen here at Vanderbilt.
Do any of you and the boys ever like talk about that? Like, we got to be the state school.
Well,
we're in Nashville,
this is what-
Tennessee. Like,
this is
we're
what-
in the Music City. Like, we need to be the brand of Tennessee.
Everyone wants to come to Tennessee because of Nashville. So they want to come to Nashville, so Vanderbilt. And then when we have like the most money in NIL, like, why not come here? So like we literally just have to win this year and throughout the rest of the year. It'll take care of itself.
You think Vandy will have the most money in the game? Or
I think we'll be up there.
Yeah.
But like it's Nashville.
Yeah, there's a lot of big hitters around here.
Yeah.
They just need a team to believe in.
Yeah. That's all they need.
They need Diego Pavia.
That was Diego Pavia on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast.
And the Bussin' with the Boys, as they love to kind of
Yeah,
keep the
they're
water
stoking the
flowing. Just keep
fire.
it flowing.
And they're good at it.
They're good at it.
They are good at it.
Yeah, they make you feel comfortable.
They're-
Just let it rip.
Their
You want a
bank
beer?
accounts.
You want a beer? Oh, here you go.
Their bank accounts will tell you
Yeah.
that they are very good at it. But when I heard
Yes.
that, I said, you know who is not going to like this? Coach Willie. Not Willie Donick.
Right.
Coach Willie.
Coach
Coach
Willie.
Willie.
It had the heartbeat was racing a little bit. Like, oh, easy.
But I was when I heard this yesterday, and maybe this is not an apt comparison, but it sort of reminded me of the Vanderbilt-Tennessee baseball rivalry when Tony Vitello showed up in Knoxville. He has a brash attitude. His team took after him. We've seen, as Willie has described, the Tennessee Volunteers baseball team, Cobra Kai. They're
Yes.
willing to play the villain. They're willing to be in your face. And I know that the Tennessee Vanderbilt football rivalry is a lot more lopsided. It's a rivalry, by the way, that dates to 1892. But I love the injection of Diego Pavia into this rivalry. I think it'll make it even more interesting. Although, as I know a lot of Vols fans are going to point out on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com, Tennessee did defeat Vanderbilt last year after falling behind 14-0 within the first 5 minutes. But as Hutton was talking about, Pavia has walked the walk. He helped engineer a huge upset last season of Alabama, and he did it in his previous stop at New Mexico State. That was not the first time. The win against Alabama was not the first time that a Diego Pavia-led team pulled off a huge upset. So although Diego Pavia did not beat Tennessee last season, I think it's okay. I think he talked the talk by beating Alabama last year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can, at least during the regular season, for Vandy, I don't think you could have asked for anything better. To get they were the number one team in the country, right? Coming in,
Alabama was the number one team in the country.
To get the number one team in the country on your playing surface, and to stand toe to toe and then ultimately beat them. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a big notch on your belt. I mean, a huge notch. You've done something that other Vanderbilt quarterbacks haven't done. To beat the number one team in the country, and not just any old number one team, Alabama, who has basically dominated you. So you should be walking around tall. I love his confidence. I really do. Some people may say it borderline, being arrogant, and I get it, but that's the space that I think guys and girls, when they're extremely competitive, that's the line they toe. And you got to find it within you to either stay on that line or not cross it, and go over to arrogance. And I'm a little bit with Willie, because Willie and we were talking about this off the air, that even though you talked, you had your talk and you walked it last year, and people tried to come at you each and every game, it's different the next following season when I have a whole offseason of game plan for you and your brand of football. It's different. And I'm not saying that Pavia is not going to come in and do or replicate what he did last season. I hope he does. I think the kid has the confidence to do it. But what also happens too is because of the style that you play, these guys are they're coming at you.
Yeah.
And those hits are going to be a little bit harder this year than what they were at any point last year.
All right, before we get to Willie quickly, right on cue from an unnamed texter. This is embarrassing. Talking about walking the walk because they beat a top 10 team at home. And who else? Kentucky? First of all, Alabama was the number one team in the country. So, yes, they were technically a top 10 team. They were the number one team in the country. And then threw for 100 yards on 8 completions on the other team he called out. You've got to do a little more than just beat a team that ended up ranked around 15 when it was said and done. All I know is that the score says Vanderbilt, what was the final score?
40-35.
And the opponent that they beat was ranked where? Number one.
Mm-hmm.
So don't give me the top 10 team BS. They were the number one team in the country.
It was a pretty remarkable and also the context is how bad they were the year before. They weren't just bad by some Vanderbilt teams. They were, even by Vanderbilt's worst standards, about as bad as they've been. And he turned them around. Now, for the encore this year, I think there are a couple things that I'm really curious about, because I do think that they were starting to figure him out and the offense out. It was Diego Pavia coupled not only with his talent, but coupled with the New Mexico State thing that they had going, the coaches they brought over, the scheme that was very unique. Eli Stowers, who was a huge part of it, right? Who's back again this year and could be a pretty good NFL prospect as a tight end. I think that took the league by surprise. They were like, wow, where did this come from? Where's the ball going? This little fake here, go there. They had a great feel for how to run that offense. But as the season went on, Diego Pavia, A, got a little banged up. B, the league started to understand as they studied the tape every week that, okay, here's how they're doing it, right? We're figuring it out a little bit. These defensive coordinators know what they're doing. And they are not the more talented team. So they hit a little bit of a wall, especially with the caliber of teams they were playing. So I'm looking to see, do they have another level of player, like maybe one or two more playmakers that can help take a little pressure off of Pavia, and maybe a wrinkle or two in the offense that add a little bit more of a dimension.
I think that's
how they go about.
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be how he redefines that offense. Because again, I have tape on you now, like real, like we've played you. It's not tape from New Mexico State. We've actually played you. So now we know how to better defend it the second go around. And what Kill has to do is, like you said, find those wrinkles within that offense, something that you can add, or a few more packages you can add that you maybe didn't do last year.
615-737-1025. Diego Pavia had some other interesting things to say on Bussin' with the Boys, and we'll discuss that next. But I'm going to see how many of you have our phone number on speed dial, because if you are caller number 1 at 615-737-1025, you will win a pair of tickets to see Incubus at Bridgestone Arena a week from today, Wednesday, June 25th. Caller number 1, 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. And they continue to offer that formula to you if you're out there and you have some financial issues you'd like to get on some better footing. They use the cash out plan that they call the Rapid Equity Loan Program at Loan Pronto. They use the equity, the home equity that you have, that's your money. And they can get you a better spot if, especially, you're maxed out on credit cards or you're struggling with high interest debt of some sort. One client, for example, used the home's equity in their house to get $300,000 approved through Loan Pronto's Rapid Equity Loan Program. They got approved in under 24 hours, paid off the debt. They even renovated their kitchen. And during this process, they cut their monthly budget by $1,800. Now, if that sounds like a good plan for you, your circumstances might be a little bit different, but just call them and get this plan moving. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 5780 or go to loanpronto.com. Get debt relief now. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Fingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, talking Diego Pavia's appearance on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. We heard him take aim at Tennessee. He also had some other interesting things to say. He was asked about outside interest in his services following his breakout season with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Here's what Pavia said about that.
Were you ever flirting with the idea of leaving Vanderbilt?
No, I never flirted with it.
Maybe for a moment.
One moment. You saw the number and you're like,
I mean, the number is great. Like the numbers are great, but like winning is more important to me than anything. And we got the squad to go do it.
When you're breaking it down with your agent or whoever your representation is, or you're talking with the coaches, how uncomfortable does it get at times? Like you might hear the rumors of 4 million, and it's like, we're all in the game of business a little bit more now. And it's like, you want to leverage the number. How much should I try and leverage the number and get to a spot that I feel comfortable? I don't want to piss anybody off. Like, how's that going for you mentally when you are in that process of potentially, them feeling like you could potentially leave?
Right. It was difficult for sure. Cause like you got Coach Kill and Coach Beck like relying on you to come back. And then, but it's like all a money game. And then like you got other schools offering you 4 million and they don't want to pay you 4 million, but you're like, all right, but like you took a chance on me. So like, I understand that. And then, Freak, I was going to say something too. Like, they told me the things that I wanted to hear of, how they're going to build the offense, what receivers we're going to go get. And they were telling me like we could pay you that, but we are not going to have enough money to go get these guys to go throw the ball around.
Yeah.
And it just made sense to me. Like, man, I value winning over anything else. So
that was Diego Pavia. And another clip, Taylor Lewan asked him about offers he may have received from other teams to transfer out of Vanderbilt. And Pavia said that most of the communication wasn't going through him. It was going through his family, but he had heard a $4 to $4.5 million number. He mentioned it was from another SEC school. Then he also took some pot shots at the Big Ten. Sorry, Darren.
Yeah, I did. I know.
But you know what I heard as a theme that ran through that answer was he felt a loyalty to Vanderbilt they gave him the shot. They believed in him. And of course they brought his infrastructure and coaching staff. That's kind of how it all began. Pavia was a little bit, if I remember correctly, a little bit of the afterthought of this is the offense that I think would be the right offense for Vanderbilt in this league with how we have to go about it. And they were like, we got this guy, Pavia. You might ought to take a look at this guy. And they were like, well, we already got this quarterback from Utah. He's coming in. They were like, you just take Diego. We're like, well, we've already had spring practice and everything. No, just trust me. Bring Diego in here and just see. And we know what happened, right? But I do think there are a lot of kids that would just hear I can get paid more over here, so forget about all the other stuff. I'm just going over here. But Diego Pavia had some force, some gravitational, this is kind of where it all happened for me, so let's try to make it happen here.
Yeah, and
not leave.
Again, in listening to Bussin' with the Boys, it was long, but it was good.
That's usually how
how it is. Exactly.
They don't really have a stopwatch.
Exactly.
Somebody
it just
going,
keeps going.
Time to roll.
But it's a really good. The interview with Diego Pavia is really good.
They make their guests comfortable.
Exactly. Make them comfortable.
Right. They're just shooting the breeze.
And he was allowed to open up.
Yes.
And I think what Pavia understands now is that, listen, when I was because he went through the whole story of him, committing to Nevada and Coach Kill retiring and all of this stuff that was going on. And then, he calls Vandy and tell Vandy, listen, I'm going to Nevada. Thank you for everything. And they're like, hold on. Coach Kill calls him. All of a sudden, now he's flipping and going to Vandy because Coach Kill's there. So there's a sense of loyalty to him. And that's good. You wish more people, period, coaches and players, in especially in college, have more loyalty and not moved by every dollar that someone is offering you. But he showed a sense of loyalty to Vanderbilt. And I'm sure, Vandy could have offered him whatever and he could have taken it. But his thought pattern, what it seems to be is, listen, I may not make the NFL. That may not be the end goal here. The end goal just may be, as we're speaking right now, is to make this program, once I leave, better than when I got it here. And hopefully by my energy and everything else is sort of filters through these younger guys that are here. And when I leave, they can take that and they can continue to run with it along with Clark Lee. I think that was one of the reasons why he want to build something here. And yeah, he probably could have got money from somewhere else, but maybe he wouldn't have been as productive in a different type of offense that he is in this offense. Even though we know there has to be some wrinkles, he has to evolve as a player and develop, but he understands, like, I want to leave something that people will talk about, 15, 20 years from now when I'm wherever doing whatever I'm doing.
I think that's a huge thing, is he has bought into,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be the reason that this program is perceived differently.
Exactly.
Like and not a lot of kids are wired like that.
No.
Clark Lee, if you remember, when he took the job, said, I want to make this the most attractive and best all-around program in the country. And everybody was like, what is he talking about? Was he smoking something? What's the deal? Like, he was really ridiculed, but he was really talking from a sincere standpoint. He really believes that they can make something special out of the program with Nashville, with the uniqueness of Vanderbilt, using what has been perceived as weaknesses and barriers and turn those things into strengths. And heck, they have taken a big step forward there, but sustaining it is important. And if Diego Pavia had just bolted, then that's a big step back.
That's
right?
now your program.
You want to be a program that's magnetic and is attracting players.
If your best player, your leader leaves,
right? And that's what happened the year before. Is all of their best players, not all of them, but a lot of them, a lot of really good players that were freshmen, sophomore. They were like, I love Coach Lee. It's a great school, but I just don't want to get my butt kicked week in and week out. That's no fun. I don't think we can win. I'm out.
Yeah.
And that is, you're repelling good players. Good players are saying, I'll use Vanderbilt for stepping stone somewhere else. If you can flip it, and this is what Pavia is trying to help with, if you can attract good players, like, hey, I'd like to go, that looks like a cool place to play. Hey, they won some games. They beat Alabama last year. Now I'm gravitating that way. That would be a huge thing. So I also am curious about this. When Pavia is done, if he's not an NFL guy, is that a guy that Clark Lee says, even now, like, hey, look, if it doesn't work out, I mean, go play pro, go play UFL, go make your dream happen. But when it's over,
come back.
We want you to back, because you're a lightning rod. You're a guy that is bringing, you're getting attention to us. We want you an ambassador. We want you a part of this thing.
Well, let me ask you this question, Willie.
That's what I would do.
You have, of course, an encyclopedic knowledge of Vanderbilt athletics. How many players in the history of Vanderbilt athletics have had the personality, the magnetism of Diego Pavia?
I don't know that there's ever been a guy quite like him personality-wise. I do think they've had a few magnetic players that have helped flip the tides, right? I would say Will Perdue would be one. Billy McCaffrey in basketball was one that just gravitated people. I think some guys who really turned the tables for Tim Corbin would be Pedro Alvarez, David Price. Those were two guys that all of a sudden, like, wow, they started attracting other good players there. I think that's a little bit personality-wise. I don't know if there's anybody been quite wired like him. In football, I don't know that they've had that guy, right?
And I think that's great for Vanderbilt.
I'm talking. I thought of some for the other sports, but I don't know that I can think of another football.
Not like that. No, not like Diego has been.
Yeah,
at least
now
James Franklin.
James Franklin alone had some of that as
but
the coach. There's only so much that the coach can do.
But I think there was some people
just
that
willed it to happen. He just kept pounding it into your head. We're gonna be good. We're gonna find a way. We're gonna attract good players. But you kind of need, when the players have that magnetism, that I think strengthens it even more. That's a new level.
But does it almost sounds, at least what I gathered as it continued with Coach Franklin, it almost got to a point where people were like, it wasn't like Diego, where I think his is infectious. Like, people want, yeah, people wanted to gravitate to Franklin, but after a while, it was like, okay, what is he really doing? Like, not. I'm talking
I
about
don't know
the fans. Like,
I think the Vanderbilt people were
because
bought
they
in.
were like, they
The
knew he
whole-
was leaving. Like, eventually, you
Yeah.
knew he was gone. Like, this was just a true stepping stone
But they
for
had
him.
not had that level of success in so long. They were starved for
Mhm.
that. So they were lapping it up while he was there. It was great.
Yeah.
It was 3 years. Not a huge window, but to win 9 games 2 years in a row, that was like, hey man, this is amazing compared to before.
And Vanderbilt at the beginning of last season,
Beating Tennessee,
they
beating Florida,
at the beginning of last season, right?
beating
Heydays.
Georgia.
Heydays.
They pull off the upset. I would call it an upset against Virginia Tech at home in overtime.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, they go to Georgia State and lose. They lose a double overtime game to Missouri. They're 2-2 on the season. They pull off the win against Alabama, and as Hutton was talking about, that following game against Kentucky was ripe for a letdown. They were the talk of college football. Diego Pavia was all over the place. Clark Lee was doing a ton of interviews, but they win that important road game at Kentucky to go to 4-2. And it felt like they've got something here. And I'm looking at Vanderbilt's football schedule next season. They have to go to Virginia Tech early this season after they hosted Virginia Tech last season. They're at Alabama. They're at Texas. They're at Tennessee. They've got some really tough games. And I'm curious to what you two were talking about now that the league sort of has, quote unquote, figured out Diego Pavia. They have the tape. I'm curious how he and the Commodores respond next season. But if you are a Vanderbilt football fan, you've dealt with a lot of lean years. And Pavia is the type of player, again, to use the term, he's magnetic. He is the type of player that if you are not paying attention to Vanderbilt football, he alone can get you to pay attention to Vanderbilt football.
And at the same time, I'm cautious because
here comes Coach Willie.
Coach Willie's coming out,
Mhm.
and I've seen Vanderbilt have good seasons and then come back with where it looks like a good team. But the league is so tough, the schedule is so tough. You could play well, but have some things not quite go right, injuries, etc. And you're like, man, we got a pretty good team, but the record ends up being 5-7 or something like that. I could see that happening. I will say that last year, the schedule was, if you did all the metrics of it, it was in the top 10, I think, of the toughest schedules in the nation, right? And so I would look for it to probably be in that same realm this year. Just what you said. It's the same teams. It's just flipped of where the game is played. So I think that it took a lot for them to get to 6-6, right? Especially with the one screw up that they had when they lost to Georgia State.
They had two screw ups, really.
Well, that was the one that they absolutely
Would
should
you
have won.
consider? Are you considering Missouri the other?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but that was a really good team, though.
Yes,
and that's
but
on the road. That was what was Missouri? Missouri was
they were ranked at the time.
team.
Yeah,
I mean they had a chance.
They
to
were
win
the
that
7th
game.
team in the country at the time.
Yeah, so we're talking about screwing up a game against number 7. Like that's different than screwing up against Georgia State. With all due respect against Georgia State, but they a lot. What's Auburn going to look like? What's Virginia Tech going to look like? I don't know. And is Vanderbilt going to be a more talented team this year? That's a fair question. I hope the answer is yes. You could be better though, and still end up 5-7. I've seen it happen.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Diego Pavia, his interview with Bussin' with the Boys. Again, Will Compton and Taylor Lewan do a really good job because they're just boys, right? You're bussing with the boys. You're shooting the breeze.
The boys.
The dad hat thing I don't ever understand with Taylor Lewan. I'm not going to pretend to understand that. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, I want to say there was a DVD group text record yesterday from the time we left the station until the time one of us chimed in about something that we had been hearing on the show right after ours. Derek set that record yesterday, and we'll discuss that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Happy hump day, everybody. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But I got some solutions because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. I know they will because they've done it for me. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
And I recognize that Cam Ward and Will Levis are two separate people. But I've got my own show is kind of the same as Levis's commercial last year. Again, I think they are completely analogous. And at the same time, with both Levis and with Cam Ward, they haven't made it yet. This time last year, Titan fans were telling me, again, this was the summer of Let Ran Cook. Titans fans were telling me he drafted a franchise quarterback. who was the laughing stock of the NFL by week 2. Cam hasn't made it yet. I hope Cam makes it. That's my team. But Cam, I'm sorry. Cam has not made it, and having your own documentary kind of feels like, hey, look, I've made it.
That was Jared Stillman yesterday. And as I was saying before the break, so the four of us, Willie,
Yes,
Derek, myself, and David, we have a group text to plan the show and our guests and all of those things. So yesterday I get in the car, I turn right out of the parking lot, head down Murfreesboro Pike, and I hadn't even hit Briley Parkway when I get a text from Derek Mason. Are you hearing what Jared's talking about? And I think this may have been an all-time record.
I didn't put an exclamation mark at the end.
No, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But I know
you were too excited, but you're just like, did y'all hear this?
Yeah,
perhaps you were a bit more muted than I am saying. But I know that Derek Mason, you want to respond to what you heard from Jared yesterday, so take it away.
Yeah, and because I listened to the whole thing yesterday, and at first I was like, I wanted to turn the radio off and just start texting Jared, but I couldn't do that. I said, let me listen to everything that he has to say. And as I started to listen to it more, I started to say, okay, all right, I wonder, is this just because the time of year we were in, or does he really feel, because he went on to talk about, this may be in sense a red flag to him, along with, and he mentioned something about, throwing an interception in OTAs. So the whole docuseries thing, you want to try to compare it to Will Levis. And I'm going to say this, there's no comparison. It really isn't. Because one guy sought it out and put it in everybody's face. The other guy didn't put it in everybody's face. He didn't get on, in the interviews, at least not to my knowledge, and say, hey, I got a 6-part docuseries coming out. Everybody, make sure y'all watch it. That's not what he did. Will Levis brought his cologne into a presser.
Yep.
He brought it into the building. And he's doing what he felt at the time he needed to do, and he probably regrets it. And I'm not getting no Will Levis for that. We've already litigated that. And I'm sure Will Levis, he had to do it over again, he would not do that. I get that part. But to try to attach these two things together, to me, it's a stretch, man. It really is. Because again, one guy promoted it, the other guy didn't. Before this docuseries came out, Jared, you were saying, hey, listen, it seems like he has all the right stuff going on. He's saying all the right things. He's doing all the right things, even on the football field. In practice, OTAs, I know it's OTAs, but it seems like he's doing all the right things. But all of a sudden now, we all get wind of a docuseries, which I'm sure some of it was already, taped, and some of it, a lot of it probably was, film that they got from his high school and the 3 colleges he went to.
The story.
The story. So
the story mentions the Variety story.
Exactly.
Where the news broke, mentions a lot of archival footage.
Exactly. So with archival footage, you don't need to spend your time as a player, Cam Ward. He doesn't need to spend his time with them. They're going to go around, they're going to get all the information that they need and put it all together. And then there's going to be a point where they're going to follow him around while he's working out. They're going to ask him questions. But before we knew all of this, everything that Cam Ward said and did on the field, albeit brief and really in the big scheme of things, it's not going to matter a hell of beans if the Titans aren't doing well. But from what he has done and said, it's been all the right things. But now all of a sudden, there's this docuseries. What if the NFL had did this docuseries on Cam Ward? What if the NFL said, you know what, we're going to do a docuseries on the first pick in the NFL draft, and we're going to do it the same way I think it's like the 1558. I need to get the correct name for the company that is doing this.
I think part of Jared's argument.
Yeah, 1558.
I think part of Jared's argument was This thing is on Tubi.
It doesn't
It's
matter.
not on Hulu.
Listen,
It's not on ESPN
It doesn't
Plus.
matter.
It's on Tubi.
It doesn't matter whether it's on Tubi, ESPN Plus. Listen, if Cam Ward has a rookie MVP or rookie of the year type season, that same Tubi video will be on Netflix. Best believe that. It will be on Apple. Best believe that. Right now, it's on Tubi, and there's nothing wrong with Tubi. Your ass ain't got one on Tubi. Seriously, like neither one of us got one on Tubi. I wasn't that good enough to have one on. I wasn't drafted in the first round, first overall to have a docuseries on any platform. Now, if you want to do it on my story, yes, you can. My career, yes. But to try to frame this as this is a red flag thing, I think is a little bit of a stretch, Jared. And
but
to anybody
can we
else,
say that the summer is the time of stretching.
Yeah, and I get that
especially
part.
when it comes to material for football, and especially with Jared, the way he does his show.
Mm-hmm.
This is when I think he is provocative, and he is prone to do these things. And I do think it's a stretch. However, I am going to say this about Jared: the point that I think he's making, that he stretched.
Mm-hmm.
Like the three of us are together. None of us have to talk for 12 straight minutes, right? He's a single guy. Look, I'm not saying that the structure of the shows are different, right? We're more discussion. He is a monologue guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the theme, I think, is a good discussion. That is, when you have our version of this last week was trying to resist overhyping him before he has played is a difficult thing to resist. Probably for Cam Ward, and because people are coming to Cam Ward, go, hey man, you're the first pick in the draft. Let's do a documentary on you. It's hard for him to say no to that. It's not like he went out and sought, hey, will you guys put some episodes of me on Tubi? Can we hire a crew? They come to him. I think
as long as it doesn't take me out of my normal regimen of doing things, then okay, y'all can follow me around. Y'all can video whatever y'all need to video, but I'm working.
But I am of the belief that it is better to under-promise and over-deliver than get the hype train moving.
But this has
and
nothing to do with the Titans.
Back.
This is not something that the Titans put together. So the Titans are
right.
The Titans are they're a separate entity right now.
But I don't know if the fans can tell the difference.
The
right?
fans, the fans can tell the difference unless you have somebody that's egging it on to try to push a narrative, and then the fans think, well, maybe you are right. But this company has nothing to do with what the Tennessee Titans or the NFL is going to do. I'm sure they're going to, if they want any NFL footage, they're going to have to get permission from the NFL in order to use that footage. So
the other example that Jared has used in the past is the whole, can I wear number one?
Mm-hmm.
He got permission. He went about it the right way, but what would you call it? The gumption to say, hey, this number's retired, but I would like to wear it.
Mm-hmm. So he should be scared to ask for it. And
it's a fair concern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to be a problem ultimately with what we've seen about Cam Ward. I think the work ethic, all of the things that he has shown, I think is okay. But I think it's a fair thing to say, look, we have seen quarterbacks get burned because they are hyped a little too much before they deliver. But Will Levis is
hyping them. The Titans aren't hyping them like this.
It's different. It's different than the Levis thing.
But Will Levis is the prime example of how it could go absolutely wrong.
Yes.
Yes.
It like there is no other way.
And Amy Adams was the one that hyped him up. She put in the press release after they fired Mike Vrabel, we have a great young quarterback.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. We didn't know that.
He's young, yeah.
He's young. He had a couple of good games.
Yeah, but great is a stretch.
But she oversold him. Yeah. No question.
I just when I understand, and this is not unique to Will Levis or Cam Ward. When a young player breaks into the NFL, they're the flavor of the month, the new kid on the block, whatever cliche you want to use. People want a piece of them. And Will Levis, he has the mayonnaise cologne. We talked about the mayonnaise cologne. Hey, isn't that funny? This mayonnaise cologne, it's sold out. We can't even get a bottle of it if we tried. And then he has the season he has. And while he's playing poorly or not playing at all, these commercials are still airing. And it's not a good look. So the Titans have been scarred by this just 1 year ago. I don't see the same thread between Will Levis doing a mayonnaise commercial versus Cam Ward participating in a docuseries. I'm mostly understanding the point Jared is trying to make. I would also agree that it's a bit of a stretch, but he is, as a Titans fan, as we know, he is concerned that the Titans are, to use his term, gassing up Cam Ward the same way they gassed up Will Levis.
How? Tell me how.
You'll have to ask him when he comes on coming up next.
And my thing, okay, the Titans have nothing to do with the Tubi thing. Nothing to do with the docuseries. That's not the Titans. Didn't
I
at
think
least
that's
not
the stretch.
At least not to my knowledge.
I
The
think
Titans
that's a fair
didn't
point
say,
by you, Derek.
Hey, listen, we want you to get with Tubi and 1558 who helps the NIL with your with Cam. We want all y'all to get together and we want all y'all to do a docuseries on Cam Ward featuring the docuseries featuring Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans and his rise from being a 0-star to now the first pick in the NFL draft. Titans had nothing to do with that. So again, it's a stretch to try to connect the two. And then he brought up what sort of, it was like, come on, now you really stretching. He brought up, who did he brought up? J.J. Watt and Tom Brady.
He brought up, I think, Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow. The difference between those people, the difference between those guys, they wasn't the first pick in the NFL draft. Watt ended up being a Hall of Fame player, and we know what Tom is, but they didn't start off like that. Cam Ward starts off as the number one pick. To my recent knowledge, there hasn't been a guy that went from 0-star, I could be wrong here, as a quarterback, 0-star to the number one pick in the NFL draft. That is a story.
It's never happened because 24/7 Sports has a composite ranking, and then the history of their composite rankings, which I think goes back at least 25 years, it's never happened.
Exactly.
And it's worthy of a documentary.
Exactly.
There's no
when
question
that
about
never,
it.
When that
Even if
never
he never
happened,
does well, if he doesn't do well as an NFL quarterback, it's still a great accomplishment. I feel that.
The thing that I think is important is that maybe, possibly, and Jared mentioned this in the clip we played, maybe, possibly, Will Levis and Cam Ward are two totally different people. And I always felt that Will Levis's confidence, it kind of felt like a put on. Like, look at me. I'm confident. I'll show you guys. Look at me. Hey. It always felt like a bit manufactured. Cam Ward, to me, comes off as naturally confident. Now, I don't want to get into the whole 10 out of 10 thing because that's another can of worms with Jared. And by the way, Jared might be a little feisty considering that his Cardinals are down 5-0 in the bottom of the first to the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina.
Yeah. It reminds me of when Louisville's basketball team, we had Jared talking to us on the show.
Yes, when we were at Boom Boss for the NCAA tournament, when
Louisville
was getting crushed by Creighton.
Yeah.
So we'll see how Jared is. But maybe, just maybe, Cam Ward and Will Levis are two totally different people. And because what happened to Will Levis happened, doesn't mean the same thing's going to happen to Cam Ward.
And listen, Cam Ward, if he doesn't succeed,
it's actually now 6-0.
If he doesn't succeed, it's not because he did a docuseries. Okay, before you found out about this docuseries, I think you had a sort of perception of Cam Ward of the kid from everything that I've seen. And if you didn't have this perception, then when you come on, you need to tell me. But before the docuseries, you thought, this kid seemed to be saying all the right things. He seemed to be doing all the right things. He seemed to be about ball. So, I mean, I guess, once we get into camp and ultimately into the season, we'll really see what it's all about. But now, all of a sudden, you've got wind, and everybody else, again, has gotten wind of this docuseries. I don't understand why that now all of a sudden changes your narrative on how you see Cam Ward. Again, if he doesn't succeed, Jared, it's not because of a docuseries, okay? It's not because he thinks he's entitled to something. Cam Ward comes off as a guy that doesn't think he's entitled to something. You know, he's a guy that had to work for everything. And when you have to work for everything, you're not at, you don't get in a position of, oh, I feel entitled. So again, I understand, hey, you got to prove it and all this other stuff. I get that. But we know in the world of sports nowadays, you know, things are done, NIL, docuseries. It's not done on what you will do in the future. It's done on what you have done and what they hope you do, not what they've seen you do.
By the way, according to 24/7 Sports, this was written before the NFL draft. Should the Titans pull the trigger on Cam Ward at number 1, he would be the first 0-star recruit in the 24/7 Sports composite to go number 1 overall in the modern recruiting era, which is since 2000.
So that is worthy to have. You know, and again, I don't know how long these docuseries are.
6 parts. Doesn't need to be 6
I'm saying,
parts.
no. What I'm saying is within the 6 parts, how long they are, like 30 minutes long.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, something like that. So no one knows except the people that actually put it together. And maybe they don't know because they haven't, you know, packaged this down and edited everything else, but they know it's going to be a 6-part series. But even with all of that, man, it just, to me, sometimes some things need to just be, you know, left alone. Some things like that need to be left alone because under any other circumstance, we wouldn't be, if we were in September, October, November, and Jared said he's not watching it because it'd be in football season. I get it. I understand. He made a good point. He will have his 17-part series.
Yes.
And hopefully more than that during the season. So Jared, you were right about that. But it comes out in September. I mean, even if he's doing, we're not going to talk much about it. You know, it's not going to be a focal point. So is the focal point now because there's not much out there? Or do you really believe that, and I can ask him, do you really believe that, oh, this is a warning sign or this is this ominous thing like, ooh, we better watch out for that. Look at that. He got a docuseries. He threw an interception in OTAs. He said 10 out of 10. We need to watch out for this. No, man. Not at all.
615-737-1025. We will have Jared Stillman coming up next. The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. Is it Chanticleers? Chanticleers? They are up 6-0 on Louisville.
I think it's the Chanticleers.
It's the Chanticleers. It's a fierce-looking rooster.
And if they can pull this off, of course, they've got 2 games to win 1. Louisville has to sweep a doubleheader. Coastal Carolina is 1 win away from the final. Coastal Carolina, who won it all in 2016, so this is not their first deep run.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be a really compelling matchup. Coastal Carolina versus a very, very heavyweight team, either LSU or Arkansas in the final. That would be some big drama. It would be a big drama for Louisville, too, but Coastal Carolina, of course, the non-Power 4 conference, that would be
huge for them.
Pretty big drama to watch.
615-737-1025. Jared Stillman coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Bruce.
D Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, Derek Mason with some strong feelings about Louisville's baseball uniforms.
Yeah, those things are atrocious. I
They
just
are.
looked at
They're
them. I'm
bad.
like, oh, those are
But I'm
ugly.
biased because every time they wear those, they've beaten Vanderbilt. So I doubly don't like it, but I don't think it's a good look. Louisville's got really good possibilities with the combination. They have some really good base play. They wore the all black ones. I'm not a big fan of those either. I really like a lot of their uniform combos, but those two in particular, I'm like, ugh.
Let's bring in our favorite Louisville Cardinal, that being Jared Stillman. So, Jared, you heard Derek respond to your take on Cam Ward in his docuseries. Your response to his response.
Well, first of all, I want you guys to know that I do fancy myself as an expert on the Louisville baseball uniforms.
They're ugly,
and
Jared.
I could go hour on hour on how disgraceful I think some of the uniforms that we wear are.
What do you think about
much
tonight?
To the fact that I think they're horrible.
Yeah.
I think they're those like knockoff Houston Astro uniforms,
Right.
which
I
were
was
cool
thinking
when
the
the
same
Astros
thing.
wore them in the 80s. It's not exactly cool when you're not the Astros to wear them in the 2020s. I have taken my complaints to the top. I mean, I have told the athletic director that if Under Armour came to me and said, hey, we want to make an investment in Louisville, Jared, and we want you, I say, whatever you do, just make sure that they wear regular uniforms, football, basketball, baseball. I'm not saying, Charlie Strong, when he was the Louisville football coach, wouldn't let him wear black uniforms at home. I'm not saying that. We can wear black uniforms, but we don't need crazy pants, and we don't need these like wing logos in the shoulders or whatever. Like just a red Louisville, a white Louisville, a black Louisville. And to Willie's point about the pants, if I became president of the United States, and I really at this point have no idea what the executive powers are or aren't, but on day one, there would be an executive order banning all colored baseball pants that are not white or gray. Now, they may have a pinstripe, that is allowed, but that are not primarily white or gray. The road team must wear gray. The home team must wear white. And I would be banning the City Connect jerseys in Major League Baseball as well. But I could go on about this all month, and I'm sure not many people care that much. Just say it.
I'm out on the City Connect as well. Get rid of the City Connect jerseys.
I mean, I was watching SportsCenter the other day.
They're all awful.
I watched SportsCenter the other day, and they had the Giants and the Dodgers, and I don't know what the hell the Dodgers were wearing. Then after that, it's the Yankees and the Red Sox, and the Red Sox are dressed like the Ukrainian flag.
Right.
And I don't know what the hell that's about. I mean,
That's
last
the
time I
marathon.
checked,
It's the marathon thing.
last time I checked, the Red Sox wore red.
Yeah.
That drove me. And then they had the Mets playing the Rays, and these Mets uniforms look like a prison uniform. Like what am I doing? What am I watching here?
Were they orange jumpsuits?
No, it's the purple and gray and I don't know. It's not
Terrible.
good.
We could go
Terrible.
down.
Derek's response. My
Yes.
response to Derek on the Cam Ward thing. Look, I'm fine with guys doing documentaries. Cam Ward wouldn't be the first one. He's done nothing, and I mean nothing in the NFL. And I just believe that, again, everyone tells me about how Cam is so dedicated to football. Louis Riddick was losing his pants over this about, he's so all ball because he was asked what he's going to do in the offseason. And he said, work out, study the playbook, and throw the ball. Oh, he's so all ball. And we talked to Mario Cristobal, and Mario Cristobal was like, he's all ball, all ball. And I'm like, I have all these people telling me he's all ball. But now I see that he's got a media company, a management company. They've been shopping around a docuseries that nobody wants. So Tubi, the cheapest of all the channels, is picking it up. It's like, are you all ball or are you all Cam? And to me, those are two different things. And so while everybody tells me he's all ball and all of that, I feel like I need to see him be all ball before I just admit to, okay, yes, this guy's the greatest, most confident winner of all time, which Titans Twitter has already decided.
Okay. My thing is this, Jared, is that I understand you want him to be all ball, and I think we all do. But I don't think there's anything that has shown us he's not all ball. I think, again, before we even knew of the docuseries, everything that he was saying, everything that he was doing, things that were being reported about him, he's all ball. That's who he is. He went through the combine process. That's all people talked about through the whole draft. This guy is all ball. Now, whether you believe he should have been number 1 overall, that's a different conversation. But I think when talking about Cam Ward, I think it was the consensus. Yeah, this dude, he's damn sure not Shador, but this guy seems like he's all ball.
This feels very Shador-like.
No, how?
Trevor and I were talking about this
did he
yesterday.
promote it? Did Cam promote it?
Well, I think he just signed the deal yesterday.
No. That's not what I'm saying. Has Cam promoted it?
Not to my knowledge.
No. Cam hasn't promoted it.
It's a day and a half old.
No, I get
but
that.
Yes, Cam has not promoted it. I guess, but again, was Shador? How's it different from Shador?
Because
doing his
Shador,
side stuff?
because a blind person can see the difference. Okay, Shador.
Because Trevor was on the show yesterday, was comparing the two.
Again, just like you, I'm not scared to tell him the same thing. There's no comparison here. So to throw Trevor in here, I've said I love Trevor, but I said my piece about some things that Trevor said as well. So
we had a fun conversation. When was it? In the summer.
I'm not going to back down from
Okay,
it.
all right. Now Willie got me going because you guys said this, and this drives me insane.
What?
The amount of people that hear something they don't want to hear, and they say, "Oh, well, it must be June. It must be a hard time to talk on the radio." Today,
would you mention this during the season? Would you mention it during the season?
David James asked me before I hopped on. David James asked what was on the show today. And the truth is, when I was putting the grid together today, I did want to talk about what Trevor said. I was actually, because Adam had told me that Derek was going to respond to what I had to say, I was going to take a cut from Derek and a cut from Trevor. And I was going to say, for everybody out there that thinks that just because you played the game, that all those people have the same opinions. That's not true. Trevor played and he doesn't like it.
And his opinion is different from mine. Yeah, absolutely.
Agree. But so I was going to put that in there. But there's so much stuff on the docket today. Between Willie's ridiculous take yesterday about UC Soros winning 3 cups in Edmonton and the fact that
he walked that back.
I did walk
just the guy for the Edmonton Oilers in net after
Jared,
they lost the cup.
Will you at least mention
Smith v. Memphis,
he's
between
ignoring me.
Caitlin Clark and all that, I could not fit it into the grid today. I have so much to talk about.
If you thought
and
it was that
you guys
big,
are sitting there being like, "Oh no, it must because we don't like it. It must be June radio."
So we're gonna pretend that sometimes in the summer there aren't some slow days. There are some slow days.
It's not a slow day.
Hold on,
Jared. I just have a request that you at least mention that I did walk back. I do admit I got carried away with 3. Would be a little high.
Give me a number, Willie.
At least one. At least one. I stand by that.
And I stand by hey, listen, if whatever you thought of Cam Ward before you had this docuseries, I don't see how this docuseries changes it. And he's nothing like Shador Sanders. And this is no comparison to Will Levis and what he was trying to hawk last year.
Was he not all ball?
But he was hawking the perfume. Did he not bring that cologne to the facility? Thank you. I didn't see Cam bringing a DVD. Well, I don't use DVDs.
Well, because Cam's thing's not out yet.
Blu-ray.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it for us today. Jared and Stoneman and Company coming up next.
Be love, love of your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful hump day. Peace.